You're watching the U.S. Senate strike, and I'll name it aptly after. But yeah, apparently the Schumer's about to introduce the bill and try and vote it unanimously. I've already gone and called my senators, and hopefully they'll do something. Who knows? Who knows? Anyways, let's see what's going on. I gotta screen share the tab. There we go. Hopefully you can see that. Hopefully you can hear it. Not much to hear, but just hope. I mean, trying to get the audio down proper. Yeah, DJ, it's not a Wii moment. It's more of a re. The sound is very faint right now. Let me see if I can. It's up all the way. So we're just hearing background noise. Their sound is just very faint. It's back. So if anybody wants to jump in and comment on this, just give me a holler and I'll let you in. I'm not gonna post the link out there. It's invite only this afternoon because this shit pisses me off. You dodge one bullet only to get another one straight in the face. Ghost Shadow, that's questionable. Are they really working? Are the tax dollars really working, or are they just going and just wasting them instead of working with it? Because it doesn't feel like they're using those
Mr.
tax
President.
dollars to work.
The senator from Hawaii.
Mr. President, I rise today deeply concerned that the far-right majority on the Supreme Court is preparing to sow further chaos in our country. Any day now, the court is expected to rule on 2 cases pertaining to the Chevron doctrine, a 40-year-old doctrine with roots that go back to our country's founding that is critical to a functioning federal government. The Chevron doctrine is pretty simple. It recognizes that Congress delegates authority to technical experts at federal agencies so that those agencies can effectively and efficiently implement federal laws in their areas of expertise in line with congressional intent. As a result, for nearly 4 decades, courts generally have deferred to reasonable interpretations by administrative agencies when the law is unclear or ambiguous. In fact, before 1984, lower court judges were criticized for overriding agency experts and imposing their own policy views, and that is why the court handed down the Chevron
Good luck,
decision
Ghost Shadow.
in the first place. The Chevron doctrine was originally favored by conservative judges, including the conservative majority on the Supreme Court during the Reagan administration, who viewed it as a check against judicial activism. In recent years, however, many on the right have turned against the Chevron doctrine, viewing it as an impediment to their efforts to consolidate power and enable far-right judges to legislate from the bench. Now, the same far-right ideologues that fought to end Roe are all in for ending Chevron as well. Justice Gorsuch, one of the most outspoken critics of Chevron, has gone so far as to call for the court to give the doctrine, quote, a tombstone no one can miss, end quote. And the so-called Alliance Defending Freedom, the same group leading the charge to eliminate access to mifepristone as approved by the FDA, has called for the Chevron doctrine to go, asserting without evidence that it allows agency experts to, quote, impose personal political agendas that Congress has not authorized, end quote.
It does.
To be clear, this case is not about the so-called major question doctrine, but about the sorts of day-to-day decisions that federal agency experts make when implementing laws. Overturning Chevron would undermine these sorts of everyday decisions, and in doing so, jeopardize the regulatory system on which much of our country and our economy rests. It would empower the hundreds of individual federal judges to overrule carefully considered rulemaking decisions by agency experts, turning a consistent regulatory framework into a chaotic mess of conflicting opinions. At its core, this case about who should be making policy decisions on issues that affect our lives, subject matter experts or federal judges. Who gets to determine the safety of the air we breathe? Environmental scientists at the EPA or federal judges? Who decides whether or not a new drug is actually effective? Doctors at the FDA or federal judges? Who determines whether nursing homes are meeting safety standards? Elder care experts at HHS or federal judges? With no disrespect to our federal judges, they lack the expertise to make these kinds of decisions. And while Congress enacts legislation at a high level, it recognizes that the institutional capacity and expertise to implement legislation exists within executive agencies.
There's Coop.
That is why federal agencies exist, to implement
Have fun, Ghost
informed,
Shadow. We'll see you later, buddy.
evidence-based regulations that provide a level of regulatory
I know it's not
certainty
fun, but
and
you know,
stability.
do your duty.
Eliminating Chevron now, after more than 4 decades, would sow chaos and confusion on agency actions moving forward, as well as the nearly
that's how I feel.
18,000 federal cases that have been decided based on the Chevron doctrine. And
Hey,
even
Ron,
if
I
the
see you out
court
there, buddy.
stops short of fully eliminating Chevron, significantly narrowing it will have much the same effect. Overturning Chevron is yet one more component of the far-right broader agenda to capture the courts, advance their conservative ideological agenda, and hollow out our regulatory system.
I thought they'd wait a week.
The court will hand down a decision in this highly important case in a matter of days. And we will see whether this case becomes yet another cautionary tale for a court that has been busy overturning decades
Either
of
submit a bill or
precedent,
sit down and shut up.
sowing chaos left, right, and center. Mr. President, thank
Hey, I'm
you.
Gabriel.
I yield.
She's complaining that the court is far right and that they're going to vote against Chevron deference and ruin the country. I'd argue that the last 4 years have been ruined. The Democrats have ruined the country already. They've already done it. They've already done that. Irreparably, I might add. Anyways, any minute Schumer is supposed to call for unanimous consent of a bump stock ban, and we're waiting on that. Though Chevron deference, the mention of that Chevron deference is important, because if the Chevron deference is taken down, it means the ATF and other government agencies cannot use it to attack or imprison citizens for trying to do the right thing, because they do that all the damn time. Yeah, I called Lindsey Graham and Tim Scott. I actually got a hold of Tim Scott's aide, so hopefully Tim will say something, and he'll be the one voice that voices out against Schumer. But again, you know, maybe Cruz will do it first. Maybe, who knows? You know, maybe Rand Paul will do it first. But I do not see unanimous consent passing in the Senate. But again, it worries me that they're even trying. They're trying to take away our rights again, just after we got them back via the courts. So that's why I'm doing this right now, when I'm live streaming it. And I know I'm talking a lot, and it's shit pisses me off, guys. You know that. I'm really worried about our country and the road we're going down. I got I got the voicemail at Lindsey Graham, and I left the message like they asked me to, and that's the best I could get with Lindsey Graham. Tim Scott, I actually got his aid and told him please have him think at the very least have him think about saying no to Chuck Schumer's unanimous consent. Because I don't expect either of my senators to actually listen to me. Sadly. Yeah, Xanthi, I know. Oh, M. Gabriel, I'm glad you got a hold of both offices. I hope they listened. I really do, because Coop would be streaming this. Unfortunately, Coop is at work right now, and apparently he's teaching a class. So Coop will get back when Coop is done. This is for Bumpy Boy. But they're also touching a couple other topics that are going to be decided by the Supreme Court too, and they're crying about them. So, where's the chocolate at, Knives? I haven't had chocolate in about a month. Yeah. For anyone asking why, I cut sugar out of my diet, so I haven't been eating anything with sugar. And well, yes, I've lost 20 pounds. The problem is, it's not easy. I'm gonna have to do some more portion control too. Maybe I might have to start drinking that other stuff. Ugh. Oh, he's out of chocolate. CNT Design Arms says you can never put anything past these people. No, you can't. This anti-misfit has chocolate. So. And if you're asking, I'm using Rumble Studio because it allows you to put the chat, and it shows how many people are watching on Rumble and YouTube right there in that top right. And I like that because that way you guys are part of the conversation, and people seeing the replay can see what you guys are saying. So they can see the actual conversation instead of YouTube, where sometimes YouTube doesn't save the live chat. So you're just like, how will they know what was said? So. So we're seeing what's going on. 317. Well, Knives. You should just go to Walmart and buy the Walmart version. The Walmart version is only like 98 cents. Or did they close the Walmart near you? I hear they're closing a lot of the ones in California.
Mr. President.
Here goes.
The senator from Alabama.
As Americans, we believe that every person on the planet is created by their creator with certain unalienable rights.
Santi, you're old.
Religious freedom is at the top of that list. And for me, I believe it must be protected at every turn. That's why I continue to be deeply concerned with what's happening in Nicaragua. Since 2018, the Nicaraguan regime has persecuted Christians, including the Catholic Church and various Christian missions and charities. This lawless behavior has only escalated recently. In December, Nicaraguan police arrested approximately a dozen individuals, mostly pastors associated with Mountain Gateway. These Christian faith leaders have been unjustly imprisoned since then and were handed down a sham sentence in March. The regime has imposed a fine of totaling nearly $1 billion. So that's about 6% of that country's entire GDP, along with 12 to 15 years of imprisonment. Let's be very clear. These Christians are in prison today because of their faith. Their very freedom has been taken away because they chose to preach the gospel. And the regime doesn't seem to want to stop there. In addition to those arrested and imprisoned, Nicaragua has issued arrest warrants for 3 more Americans. They are all associated with Mountain Gateway. So Mountain Gateway is an American nonprofit, a faith-based organization that was founded by an Alabamian and is based in Texas. Mountain Gateway recruits, trains, commissions, and sends out ordained Christian ministers to spread the gospel. In Nicaragua, the organization has advanced God's kingdom through discipleship, through feeding and clothing those in need, through providing assistance after natural disasters, and sharing the gospel of our Lord and Savior, Jesus Christ. These individuals doing this work should be celebrated, not persecuted. Earlier this year, I joined a bicameral group of colleagues in criticizing Nicaragua's regime and this egregious violation of religious freedom. Led by Congressman Robert Adderholt and Congressman Barry Moore, Alabama's entire congressional delegation has been united against this and on this very important bipartisan issue. We've written letters, we've introduced resolutions in both chambers of Congress, and we've called on the Biden administration to utilize all sanction enforcement powers and leverage.
You're not here to save the day yet, Coop.
Diplomatic way.
You still haven't
Any
jumped in.
options that are in the
you got a
toolbox
link.
should be used to force Nicaragua to remedy the situation. Today, I want to emphasize that we cannot and we will not stop speaking up against this religious persecution in Nicaragua. We are calling on the Biden administration to do more now. This regime must stop targeting American citizens, and it needs to begin faithfully upholding religious freedom in compliance with international law and universal standards of human rights. I yield the floor.
All right, Coop, I'll give you a hall pass. Oh, look who showed up. I sent him the link and he jumped in and then left. All right. Yeah. Thanks, DJ, for posting the numbers. Can you post them again separately because they're sandwiched together? I'll put them in the description of the video too. So yeah, it's just we're waiting and we're waiting. Yeah, I didn't have any problems. If you're using the Rumble app on your phone, there's no problems. So you might want to do that, Coop. Install the Rumble app. The whatchamacallit app, the studio app. So yeah, recap for those just joining us. Here's the situation. As I mentioned earlier in my video, they're supposed to be later this afternoon. They're Chuck Schumer's supposed to institute his unanimous consent for a bump stock ban in the Senate. I've already contacted my senators and asked them to say no. I've already contacted, some other senators that I know. If you haven't called your senators to ask them to vote no to this unanimous consent, do so now while you still have the chance before it comes up. Because once it comes up, it's too late. And, even if you don't care about bump stocks, they're trying to take away what we just won in the courts. They're trying to infringe on your Second Amendment rights. No more infringements. Please, I implore you to do the right thing. The number out there for the Capitol switchboard is 202-224-3121. Call your senator, please. So that's that. Coop says he might be jumping back in soon, so we're waiting on him. I turned the require approval off so he can just jump in. But yeah, this may be a long one, and right now we're just waiting for them to go and put stuff through. Earlier, the representative from Hawaii was complaining about the Chevron deference decision that's going to be happening in the courts very soon, and the implications it could have. And I'm like, Chevron deference has ruined many people's lives when they really didn't do anything wrong. So, honestly, I'm not sad to see Chevron deference go if it does. It just means you actually have to apply the actual letter of the law to people instead of, made up bullshit by a agency. Agencies should not institute policies. Agencies should be following policy. And they don't make rulings. They follow the letter of the law. It's the court's job to do the rulings. It's the Senate's job to do the rulings, to do laws. It's not government agencies' job to do the laws. Their job is only to enforce, not make up. Because last I remember, I didn't vote anybody in the ATF into office. I didn't vote anybody in the FBI into office. I sure as hell didn't vote anybody in the FDA into office. And that's the point. And then there was a thing about I think it was the Alabama senator.
The senator from Delaware.
Uh-oh, here it
Mr.
comes.
President, are we in a quorum call?
We are not.
In that case, I ask to be recognized and pleased to be here with you today. I rise today in strong support of critical bipartisan legislation that will come to the Senate floor not later this year or later this week or this month, but later today. It's called the Fire Grants and Safety Act. Importantly, this legislation includes not one, but two critical pieces of bipartisan legislation that I've been working on with Senator Shelley Capito and a bipartisan coalition of our colleagues literally for years. The first part is called the Accelerating Deployment of Versatile Advanced Nuclear for Clean Energy Act. That's a mouthful, but it's also known as the ADVANCE Act. And we couple that with legislation involving support for our firefighters across the United States of America. Last month,
Yeah,
the
and
House
Gabriel, that's fine
Representatives
as long as
passed
Congress
these
makes the
two
law.
bills, not as one, but as a package by an overwhelming bipartisan vote of, get this, 393 to 13.
But
Now, we
Congress
don't pass a
should
lot
be
of bills
following
by
the Bill of
margins like
Rights,
that
and
over
it
in the
doesn't.
House or the
And
Senate.
it angers me.
But today we have an opportunity in the Senate to do something very much the same. Before this evening's vote, though, I want to take a few minutes to highlight the significance of both the Fire Grants and the Safety Act, as well as the so-called ADVANCE Act. In my role as co-chair of the Congressional Fire Services Caucus, along with Senators Susan Collins and Lisa Murkowski, I've shared here on the Senate floor many times over the years that every day, our nation's firefighters bravely run toward danger in order to save lives across America. In my home state of Delaware, there are more than 6,000 firefighters, 6,000, and a great
yeah,
majority of
doesn't know
them
how to
are
grill.
volunteers. The same is true in many states across America. And yet, despite their
that
extraordinary
whole
dedication
Father's
to
Day picture
protecting
was
our communities,
ridiculous.
their jobs are not getting any easier. In fact, they are getting harder. And the risks that they continue to face grow each year. Annually, I'm told that there are over 36 million emergency calls that fire services respond to. 36 million. That's a 20% increase in the last
One car. We need
12
to
years. This is in no small part due
legislate
to
legal
climate change and the
F-15s
resulting
for everyone. Because
increases in
apparently
extreme
Biden
weather
says we need
events across
F-15s.
our country, which are translating directly into hotter, bigger, and more dangerous
Legalize
fires.
F-15s.
Just this week, our country is experiencing record-breaking temperatures from New England to California, where heat risks have been categorized by the National Oceanic and Atmospheric Administration as extreme. It's clear that the kinds of emergencies that our firefighters must respond to are changing, and the demands on fire departments across this country are changing as well. For example, last year when a devastating tornado touched down in southern Delaware in Sussex County, it was our firefighters who showed up to lead people to safety. We've seen similar acts of service across our nation, especially on the West Coast, where firefighters have long helped families escape the hazards of wildfires. I believe we have a moral obligation, which I believe is shared responsibility, to provide the resources that firefighters need to continue to protect the rest of us, our families, and our businesses. And today we have an opportunity to do just that. The Fire Grants and Safety Act reauthorizes not one, but two critical grant programs that fire departments across our nation rely on to safeguard our communities. The first is called Staffing for Adequate Fire and Emergency Response Grant Program.
They
And
are
it
one
provides
car fast.
funding
They are.
to local fire departments to hire much
Because
needed
those
personnel
Glock
to
switches are
respond
everywhere.
round the clock to emergency situation. The second is the Assistance to Firefighters Grant Program, which helps provide fire departments and
Well, I need one,
emergency medical
Gabriel.
service
Don't
organizations
you?
with
You
the
need
vital
one.
training and equipment
You know, one car
like
fast
fire
needs an
trucks
F-15.
and protective gear that
know,
they need. Fire departments
So does
across
Coop.
Stellar
Coop
have
needs an
contacted
F-15.
my office to share how these grant programs
DJ Play
are
Nice definitely needs
a
one.
lifeline for their
Lawfully
work
Armed
that
needs
they do
one.
every day. And I'm sure
Uh,
our colleagues have heard similar
Who else is out
stories
there?
of the
Mr.
essential
Nyers
roles that
definitely
these
needs an
programs
F-15.
play
So
in
does
fire
Zanny.
departments
Zanny Misfit
across
needs an F-15.
America. For example, fire
Uh-huh.
departments in Colorado have reported
Who
a
else
lack
was
of
out there?
critical funding and supply,
Now,
which
Ghost
could be
Shadow
aided
needs an
by the
F-15.
Assistance for
Ron
Firefighters
Twain
Grant
Matters needs an
Program.
F-15.
And firefighters
Gizzard
in
Gary
Vermont,
definitely needs an
where
F-15.
presiding officers from, firefighters from West Virginia, that co-sponsor this
it's just-
legislation, where I was born, have reported being overwhelmed and understaffed in light of recent emergencies in
They should
their
be common use.
community. It is clear as day that reauthorizing these grant programs is imperative. The Fire Grants and Safety Act will also enable the United
Yeah,
States Fire
They're the
Administration
modern.
to continue to
They're
provide
the modern
leadership,
issued firearm.
coordination, and training for first
So I don't see
responders
why
and
we shouldn't have them.
emergency medical personnel. As the lead federal agency for fire data collection, public fire education, fire research, and fire service training, the United States Fire Administration ensures that the fire service is prepared to respond to any and all hazards.
Don't give an F-15 to Flying
Firefighters put
Rich.
their lives
Don't
on
give
the
Rich
line
a
for
fly,
us
an
every
F-15. It's
single
been a while
day.
since he's,
I'm proud to work with Senator Gary
He's,
Peters as well
he's had the crash,
as with
so
my
he can have one again.
Congressional Fire Service co-chairs,
Hey,
Senator
Damian, we
Collins
see
and
you out
Senator
there.
Murkowski, on this legislation to equip our firefighters with the tools and training they need to do their
And
jobs.
with this
and
bill,
do
I
them
see
safely.
nothing wrong with this bill. It's
There
all
is
about
an African
getting
proverb, but
firefighters money
many of
to
my colleagues have heard it
put out
because
fires.
I said it
That's
enough.
fine.
But there's an African proverb goes something like this: if you want to go fast, go alone. If you want to go far, go together. I think that's true. If you want to go fast, go alone. If you want to go far, go together. Today,
Isn't that
on
right,
the Senate
Coop?
floor with
You
this
need an
legislation,
F-15.
we're going far. And as it turns out, we are going together. Both Democrats and Republicans from all across the country, and in concert with the administration, with the president who supports this legislation. We're doing it by considering not one, but two bipartisan priorities at the same time.
Gabriel.
That second priority before us today
give
is
Flying Rich
legislation
one.
known as
It's
the
been long
Advance
enough.
Act. This is legislation that Senator Shelley Moore Capito of West Virginia, my native state, and Senator Sheldon Whitehouse and I
I
have
think
worked on
Rich needs
tirelessly
more of a
for
bigger
years
one. And I think he
in
needs a
both a
C-30.
bipartisan and a bicameral manner. The Advance Act accelerates the deployment of our nation's largest source of clean power, and that is nuclear energy. Nuclear energy powers millions of homes and businesses across this country every day with zero emissions. It is an indispensable tool in our ongoing efforts to address the climate crisis and strengthen our nation's energy security. My own personal interest in the potential for nuclear energy goes all the way back to my days as a Navy ROTC midshipman, and later as a naval flight officer tracking nuclear submarines throughout the oceans of the world. I witnessed how initially our submarines and later our aircraft carriers could travel millions of miles safely on nuclear power, largely because of the success of the Navy nuclear propulsion program. The United States had the technology and the workforce at the ready to build a commercial nuclear energy industry that could provide safe, reliable, and clean energy to American homes and businesses. Today, nuclear energy provides about 20% of America's electricity, 20%, but nearly half of America's clean energy. Let me repeat that. Nuclear energy provides about 20% of America's electricity, but nearly half of America's clean energy. There's no question that this carbon-free source of energy can and will help us meet, it is helping us meet our climate goals. That's why I've long believed that nuclear energy needs to be part of our work to address climate change while also creating thousands of jobs,
Remember,
tens of
you can
thousands
at
of
Night
jobs.
Strike, and
In
I
fact,
can put it up
across
on
this nation of
the
ours.
screen, okay?
The ADVANCE Act empowers the Nuclear Regulatory Commission with the tools and with the workforce that it needs to keep our current reactors safe and to review new nuclear technologies efficiently.
Oh,
These
yeah.
resources
New
will enable the
nuclear
Commission to
technologies?
provide
Definitely.
the certainty needed to deploy more clean energy
No, you
and to
can't
make
get a
sure
compliant
that our commitment to
F-14.
safety remains
They've
paramount
discontinued the
at this
F-14.
crucial moment in the
You can get a
history
CA
of our
compliant
planet.
F-15 though.
The ADVANCE Act also directs the Nuclear Regulatory Commission to support 21st century applications of nuclear energy. For example, the ADVANCE Act requires the Commission to explore how to repurpose retired fossil fuel-fired power plants, as well as existing infrastructure to support new, clean nuclear energy production. Additionally, this legislation fundamentally, and I think firmly, maintains the core of the Nuclear Regulatory Commission's mission, and that is to ensure the safety of America's nuclear power. Unless the Nuclear Regulatory Commission diligently ensures the safety of our nuclear fleet of reactors every day, as well as new nuclear technologies, the U.S. will not be able to realize the potential of this carbon-free energy source. And the Nuclear Regulatory Commission must
You
maintain
want the
this
F-15
commitment
over
to
the 14.
safety
The 15's
while
better.
considering all shareholders, all stakeholder views and concerns equally in order to maintain the public trust and confidence. Ultimately, this bill addresses the most pressing needs of the Nuclear Regulatory Commission and will lay the foundation for the safe and successful deployment of the next generation of advanced reactors. As a result, it will strengthen Americans' leadership on nuclear energy and provide climate leadership on the world stage. Let me be clear. The ADVANCE Act will strengthen our energy and our national security and reduce greenhouse gas emissions, as well as creating thousands of new jobs while growing our economy. I'm not sure what our colleagues would call that in their states, but in Delaware, something like that, we call that a win-win-win situation. We need more of those. In closing, the legislation we vote on today will provide fundamental support
Well, so is
for our
Flying
nation's
Rich,
firefighters while bringing our nation one step closer to a clean energy future. Once again, I want to share my heartfelt gratitude to our colleagues, our staff members who have worked with us, Democrat and Republican, House and Senate, in some cases, not just for days or weeks or months, but literally for years, in order to bring these provisions across the finish line. So many of our colleagues have had a hand in this effort, but in particular, I want to thank Senator Gary Peters, who chairs the Committee on Homeland Security, with Senator Susan Collins, Senator Lisa Murkowski, who've been great leaders in fire services caucus over the years. Senator Shelley Moore Capito, who literally is the lead author on the ADVANCE Act, and Senator Sheldon Whitehouse, who's in very much involved in crafting that legislation as well. We could not have done this and be where we are today without each of you. Before I close, let me also mention, this is not something that I get to do every day, but I want to also thank the Speaker of the House, Congressman Johnson, for ensuring this bill's passage through his chamber with resounding bipartisan support. I think it was about 390 to 13. That's an amazing, amazing outcome in legislation of this magnitude. But and I want to thank our own majority leader here, Senator Schumer, for working with us and his staff to bring this legislation up for a vote today. Some people might be watching this across the country and think, what is this all about? And why would we take legislation dealing with firefighters and the tools, the resources that firefighters need? Why would we couple that with legislation involving nuclear energy? What's the connection? And the connection is this. Last year was the hottest year on record on this planet, as far as hottest year ever. This week is maybe the hottest week we will have had in this country and maybe on this planet, hottest week. And what's causing that? Well, we know what it's causing is too much carbon dioxide in the air, and we need to reduce it. And one of the great sources of carbon dioxide in the air is the cars, trucks, and vans that we drive. That's probably about 35% of the carbon emissions come from our mobile sources. Maybe another 30% come from our power plants, that provide electricity for us. Maybe another 25% come from our manufacturing plants. That's where it's coming from. And we're doing a whole lot of things. House and Senate, Democrats, Republicans working together in many cases, working with the current president, current administration, in order to try to turn around the fact that our planet is on fire and getting hotter. We have passed all kinds of legislation. It's being enacted now, a methane emission reduction program, legislation involving the release of hydrofluorocarbons, HFCs, legislation as part of the bipartisan infrastructure law, including literally across the country, the places have people can charge and recharge their batteries, corridors across the country to recharge electric vehicles. That's part of what we're doing. Clean hydrogen which can be used to provide literally to fly airplanes and to move cars, trucks, and vans, and to provide us the electricity that we need. We're doing a lot on windmills, especially windmills, not just on land, but windmills on either side of our country. And a lot is going on with respect to solar, and we can be proud of all that. Having said that, we're I'm probably mixing metaphors here, but we're paddling against the tide. This is a tough battle. And while we've launched a lot of smart programs and smart initiatives and doing it in a bipartisan way, and we've done it with, in many cases, not just environmental groups and business groups and as well, but we still have a big fight ahead of us. And we need to
more power
implement
anyways.
fully
If you want more
methane immersion
electric
reduction practices, the
things,
Kigali Treaty,
you have to have
bipartisan
power to run
infrastructure
it.
law,
So either build more coal plants
Inflation
or
Reduction
build
Act,
more
clean
nuclear
hydrogen,
plants.
hydrogen hubs, all the stuff that people hear about we need to not just talk about it, we need to implement it. That's what I'm going to be spending the next 6 months that I serve here, or privileged to serve here in the United States Senate to do, to make sure that the promise of all the legislation, all the groundwork that we've laid will actually bear fruit. And these young pages that are sitting here up at the
Number 4,
along
what
with the
M.
presiding
Gabriel
officer
does when he's
who come
infringed.
here from all over the country. They're 16, 17, 18 years old, to make sure that they're going to have a planet to grow up on. We want to make sure they have a planet to grow old on. And it's up to us to make sure that that happens. It's a shared responsibility, like most things. It's not just a Democratic responsibility. It's not just a Republican responsibility. It's not just on the president or the legislative branch. It's not just businesses and all. It's really all of us. We all have a dog in this fight. A lot of us have children and grandchildren, and hopefully they will benefit throughout their lives from the work that we're doing here, including the work that we're doing here today. I am very proud of my colleagues for getting us to this point in time, and I'm especially anxious to have this vote later today. And I hope the kind of margin that they were able to stand up in the House, I think it was 390 to 13. I hope we can do at least as well, and maybe even a little bit better. And I'm grateful to the president for his strong support of what we're bringing up today. And he's already telegraphed that he's prepared when he receives this legislation to sign it into law. Joe Biden used to say it's when he was a mere mortal, when he was a senator from Delaware, he used to talk about volunteer fire companies. We got a bunch of them. And most of the firefighters in Delaware are members of volunteer fire companies. And I think that's probably true across the country. But then Senator Joe Biden used to say that volunteer fire community in Delaware was really sort of like, they're so potent, they're kind of like a third party, sort of like a third party. And they punch above their weight in many ways. And they punch above their weight in many ways to make our state safer. I think that's the case across America. We want to make sure that they have the tools, the resources that they do to do their jobs even better, and to make sure they're able to do it safely at the end of the day, so they can go home to their families, have a full and a long life. With that, Mr. President, I think that's pretty much
I
what I
don't
wanted
think
to say.
we have
And I want to thank you,
Robotech
Mr. Presiding
planes
Officer, as somebody who's been
Nice.
very supportive of this initiative.
We don't
We
have
look forward to, under your leadership today, to get a strong vote.
we don't
and
have
I look
Robotech
forward to
fighters yet.
coming back in an hour or so and being part of that vote. With that, I yield the floor. And I note the absence of a quorum.
Clerk will call a roll.
I know M. Gabriel. I've been saying that for years.
Spelman.
Knives. They only made 2 of them.
Mr. President,
Senator from Massachusetts.
I rise today to discuss.
We're in a quorum call, Senator.
Mr. President, I ask for a vitiation of the calling of the quorum.
Without objection.
Thank you, Mr. President. Mr. President, I rise today to discuss Senate 870. I am a passionately strong supporter of the effort to reauthorize the U.S. Fire Administration, the Assistance to Firefighters Grants Program, and the staffing for adequate fire and emergency response grant program. It is essential. I voted in favor of all of that legislation to reauthorize these key programs on April 20th of last year. And I remain strongly and staunchly in support of these efforts to support
They're going to
our
try and ban
first
bump stocks
responders.
today.
Those who run into
That's them off the
danger
top.
must know that
So,
we in Congress have
if you haven't done so
their
already,
back.
Call
keep our
your
communities
senators.
safe.
Tell them no on
And
bump
we must
stocks.
keep their resources safe
Tell them
in
do
return.
not ban bump stocks.
Unfortunately,
The
the vote
number is
today is
202
not just
224
for the life-saving
3121.
programs that I am staunchly on record as supporting. On the coattails of this non-controversial bill to protect our heroes, our colleagues in the House tacked on a dangerous additional 90-page package of provisions that merged the Senate's Advance Act and the House's Atomic Energy Advancement Act.
Hey, Ron.
Well, because of this airdrop provision into the fire bill, I will be opposing final passage of this bill. Well, let me go now to what is the Advance Act? And why would they try to attach it to something that is absolutely essential? Why would they not just bring it out? Try to have a big debate on it? Well, I'll tell you why. The original version of the Advance Act, which I voted against in the committee, was weakened further and watered down further in negotiations with the House. The new language attempts to water down the duties of the Nuclear Regulatory Commission. It puts communities on the back burner, and it dilutes existing protocols that keep our nation safe from the threat of nuclear war. That's what we're talking about today, nuclear war. It puts promotion over protection and corporate profits over community cleanup. Notably, the provisions from the Senate bill that would have provided a much-needed $225 million for communities affected by nuclear closures and $100 million
Ron, I need to
clean
borrow
up
your crowd.
contaminated tribal communities are not in the legislation anymore, as it came back from the House of Representatives. But the provisions to prop up the nuclear industry, they remain.
I'll let you
I
borrow
entered
my
office
RPK.
just a year after the Nuclear Regulatory Commission was established in 1975. Why did we create a Nuclear Regulatory Commission? Very simple. Because there was an identification of a need for an independent oversight of nuclear domestic power plants in the United States and nuclear activity generally. And there was a decision looking at the Atomic Energy Commission, which existed,
I'm sure we could print
to
an
say
extended credit
that
back.
agency is responsible for regulating nuclear power, but it's also responsible for promoting nuclear power here and around the world. And that was a fundamental conflict of interest. You promote something by minimizing the problems or ignoring the problems. And that was becoming a big problem, that they weren't dealing with the very real issues of safety that had been raised about nuclear power in our country. This is before 3 Mile Island, it's before Chernobyl, but it's anticipating the safety issues that were going to be growing and growing and growing. So the NRC's current mission, before this bill passes, reflects this critical responsibility to the American public. Regulation and licensing free from the influence of industry, and that puts health and safety above all else. So we have a separate agency, it's called the Department of Commerce.
Yeah, I know, Ron.
They can go and promote anything they want. They can try to sell whatever they want, domestically or internationally. But the agency in charge of safety is the Nuclear Regulatory Commission. They got to make sure that anything that the Department of Commerce is pushing doesn't wind up being a danger. So we create this dynamic tension inside of the government. And ultimately, that
says he'll be on when
goal
he
of the
jumps in-
Nuclear
when he gets
Regulatory
home.
Commission that puts health and safety above all else is what protects us against nuclear accidents here or overseas, wherever we're selling nuclear power plants. The ADVANCE Act, as attached to the Fire Grants and Safety Act, completely unrelated subject. One deals with the resources we're giving to firefighters, the resources we're giving to local fire departments in order to fight fires as they pop up in our local communities. That's something we all support. But what they did was they added to that bill language that would require, underline that, require the Nuclear Regulatory Commission to rewrite its mission, to state that its regulation and oversight should, and this is quote, not unnecessarily limit civilian nuclear activity, regardless of whether it is beneficial or detrimental to public safety and national security. The Nuclear Regulatory Commission shouldn't be the Nuclear Retail Commission. The commission's duty is to regulate, not to facilitate. Their job is to ask all of the safety questions, to make sure the design is okay, to make sure that the waste is being stored properly, to make sure that an accident can't happen, to make sure that climate change, as the tides rise, doesn't swamp a nuclear power plant near a river, near the ocean. That's their job. It's to protect all the people who live in communities. We've got other agencies that are funded, able, and willing to fulfill the role
Hey, Chris.
of promoting nuclear power. But this legislation does nothing to assure communities at the front line of nuclear infrastructure that nuclear expansion won't come at their expense in local communities. It compels the Nuclear Regulatory Commission to identify how it can improve efficiency in its oversight and inspection programs, without asking it how it can also improve safety or public engagement so that the public can go in and ask questions about this nuclear power plant in their neighborhood. Force the CEO of the company to answer questions about concerns that people who live near a nuclear power plant might have. It provides no redress for families living near abandoned uranium mines
Zanti, I
and
will try
unsafe
that. Thank
nuclear
you.
waste sites. At the very least, a rapid expansion of nuclear activity should be accompanied by rapid expansion of the resources and regulators that help protect community health and safety. If we do it, we should do it all together, one big package. This new language also fails to ensure continued American leadership on nuclear nonproliferation overseas. It fails to do anything to strengthen our current regime, and export licenses for nuclear materials and technology should be issued to countries that do not meet our own standards for nuclear safety and cooperation, only requiring, that's what this law now says, it will only require a notification to Congress after that nuclear license is issued in another country, and exempting even this after the fact notification for exports of up to 20% enriched uranium. And you're right, whenever you hear the words uranium or plutonium, your ears should perk up. Because in many countries, they see a nuclear power plant as a generator of electricity that has this side effect of uranium and plutonium. But in the eyes of some countries, and we saw that in Iran, in Iraq, in North Korea, as they got nuclear power plants, they saw it as a place where they can get uranium and plutonium that has this wonderful byproduct of electricity that it also generates. So we should be concerned because we've already been forewarned by our experiences over the last 20 or 30 years. We can see what happens if there isn't a proper recognition of how all of this material can, in fact, be diverted. We shouldn't get a heads up about the fact that Saudi Arabia now has American nuclear material. That shouldn't happen after the fact. That should happen before the fact. We should know that this is going to happen. The bill also pushes the Secretary of Energy to identify generally authorized countries for exports beyond those with existing 1, 2, 3 agreements. So what are 1, 2, 3 agreements in the Atomic Energy Act? Well, 1, 2, 3 agreements lay the foundation for the responsible exchange of nuclear materials and technology with countries that share common guardrails for nuclear safety. That is the diversion of uranium and plutonium and other nuclear materials in a way that ultimately could wind up in a bomb-making program somewhere in the world. We should not be looking for ways to work around or weaken our export standards even further. Throughout my career, I have seen nuclear safety and nonproliferation undermined in the interest of the short-term geopolitical concerns of a particular administration or industry at the expense of the longer-term nuclear nonproliferation goals, which we say are our highest foreign policy objectives. They get compromised in the short term because one administration or another just wants to use nuclear power plants as a way of ingratiating the United States into the good favor of a particular country. Could be Saudi Arabia soon, could be another country right after that, but without all the safeguards that should be there. in order to protect against diversion of these materials. So the United States is supposed to be the leader in the global arena. In a nation with nuclear capabilities, we have a duty to set the strongest possible standards for domestic and international nuclear activities as an example to the rest of the world. We also have to clean up our existing messes, particularly in tribal and environmental justice communities, before investing in anything that might make those messes worse. As a result, despite my strong and continued support for the fire safety grants and my respect for my colleagues working on this issue, I must vote no. Now, in 1982, I wrote a book about nuclear proliferation and about domestic nuclear power plants. The book was entitled Nuclear Peril: The Politics of Proliferation. And it's what happens when there is a shortchanging of the safety, the security measures which should be put in place. And it also dealt with the issues domestically of a reduction in the generalized supervision of nuclear power plants in terms of having the highest possible safety standards. Now, there are many in this institution who want to see a vast expansion of nuclear power using plutonium and uranium in the United States. And they also support a vast expansion of nuclear power plants around the world using uranium and plutonium. And I appreciate the fact that they want to do that, and many want to see that happen in the name of climate change because it reduces greenhouse gases. But it has its own problems. It brings its own problems. We still don't have a solution to where we're going to bury all the nuclear waste in the United States. The Yucca Mountain facility in Nevada still hasn't been completed. And in my opinion, it will never be completed. And we're now up to 35 years working on it. And similarly, overseas, if we get into a race with other countries, Russia or China, in the export of nuclear power plants, we should not lower the standards. We should ensure that we're in as the responsible provider of nuclear power around the world so that we reduce dramatically the threat of nonproliferation. So my book in 1982 is directly relevant to this subject right here. Because whether it be North Korea, they converted a civilian nuclear power plant over to a bomb-making factory, whether it be in Iraq with Saddam Hussein, whether it be in Iran, you name it, the story is the same. So we have to be very responsible, ensure we have the highest standards. And that's my goal in coming out here. And I am going to vote no, because I think if we are going to be encouraging a brand new era of nuclear power here domestically and internationally, we should have that discussion. It shouldn't be attached to the fire safety bill to make sure that firefighters can put out the fire in the house that's next door to us. We all are going to agree on that. On this issue, however, the issue of nuclear nonproliferation, the domestic safety of power plants in our country, that's a different subject. But
Buy my
honestly,
book now.
my great friend, Chairman Copper,
How Not to Be Infringed.
who is just such an incredible leader on clean energy, the chairman of the committee that produced the most important climate bill in 2022 in a generation. He is my friend, and I thank him for engaging in a colloquy with me to clarify in detail the legislative intent.
Did you see how
of
Hirono
some
was
of these
complaining about
provisions, and I
Chevron
look forward
deference?
to continuing to work on efforts to protect communities, clean up
hilarious.
toxic waste, and create a consent-based
Dude, she
pathway
is sweating bullets
to
at the
nuclear
Supreme Court
waste
will actually
storage
protect
in
people's
our country.
Yeah, that the government
decision to
agencies
put all
can't
of the
illegally
nuclear
go
waste
in
in
and
our country
prison,
in
you
Yucca
know,
Mountain, it was a political
law-abiding
decision.
citizens anymore.
I was in the room when it was made.
She is
The
terrified.
National Academy of
All these
Sciences
Democrats
said
are.
that the Yucca Mountain facility was at the bottom of the places.
And
in
a
our
lot of
country.
Republicans.
It's near a river. It's near an
Democratic Party
earthquake
has
fault.
ceased being the party
No
of the
wonder
people.
we haven't finished.
They've
it.
ceased being the
The
party of
safety
Roosevelt.
questions
They're
were
the
never
party
answered
of
at the
socialism
beginning.
and tyranny now.
And that's all I ask. If we're going to move into a new era of nuclear power here and around the world, let's ask the questions up front. Let's make sure
Shit,
we
I
put
need
the
a beer.
safeguards in place. Let's make sure we avoid
I wasn't going to
having
crack
to
one
look
right away,
back
but damn it,
and
after
say-
listening to this.
how in the world did we ever allow something like that?
Yeah, one car
ever
fast. Where's
occur
my
again.
depleted,
So I thank you,
uranium
Mr.
556? I want
President,
some.
for the opportunity to be out here. And with that, I yield back.
I was wondering, looks like John's up.
When is Chucky supposed to make his announcement?
It should be. It could be any time. That's the reason I've been paying attention to these damn horseshit speeches all damn day today.
Why I started up a stream. You said
Yeah.
something, and I'm like, I should probably be on top of this. So I made a video because I heard about it this morning, and then I'm like, you know what? Fuck it, I'll just stream it.
Yeah, I
No.
mean, I'm glad you were because I wasn't able to. I'm like I said, I'm just getting in from work. But yeah, it's I told you last week it would be this week when they started pushing this
I
horse.
thought he'd wait a week and try and do it all sneaky, like because he's a snake.
But don't disgrace snakes like that.
Well, I don't know if you read the Bible, Coop, but snakes are evil.
Look, I have never met an evil snake. But you got to treat snakes like snakes.
Yeah, they have no loyalty.
They're just always wild. They're always nature.
Mr. President,
They're always out for
Senator from
themselves.
Kansas.
Mr. President, thank you. 10 years ago, a wait time scandal at the VA Medical Center in Phoenix, Arizona, led to a nationwide access and accountability crisis for VA healthcare system.
Accountability.
Many of us responded to that, worked to find a solution.
I'm just
and
glad
we
my
ultimately
grandfather
passed
didn't have to
something
go through
called
that
the
because he
Choice
never
Act.
used the VA once. He always
Subsequent
had
to
his
that, we
own.
made improvements in
health
what we
insurance.
learned from the Choice Act's
Oh, man, I've
implementation
taken-
and usage.
Or
by
he used
veterans.
and he had it
and its
along with
consequences
Medicare.
to the Department of
and
Veterans
Medicaid.
Affairs, and we
I've taken
enacted
my
the
parents'
Mission Act,
VA. I've taken my
which was
damn
signed
uncle's
into
to
law
VA.
6 years ago this
I've
month.
never had a good experience with the VA.
The Mission Act expanded the
My
ability
grandfather
for
didn't believe
veterans
in
to
using the
seek
VA,
care
one,
in their
and
communities
two,
and made VA healthcare more
Because
accessible.
they looked
convenient,
poorly on
and
the Korean War
veteran-centric
vets. He didn't think
than
he'd
ever
ever
before.
get seen.
The Mission Act has also contributed to significant
yeah.
increases
Korean War
in
vets had it
enrollment,
rough. Let me tell you something.
of
Vietnam
veterans,
vets had it even
utilization,
rougher.
and reliance on VA care,
Oh, yeah.
and improvements in quality and trust among veterans. For veterans, particularly those in rural states like yours and mine, the ability to get care closer to home can be life-changing and life-saving. Unfortunately, recently VA leaders have been taking alarming actions to limit the choices that the Mission Act affords veterans in Kansas and across the country. It is unfathomable that the VA would consider
now I got the
leaving
YouTube
veterans
chat.
with fewer options.
Yeah.
Fewer options.
I've
to
got it
seek
up
the
there
care
on
they
the
need.
on the screen there.
Yet,
That's
I've
YouTube
seen a
and,
dramatic
Rumble.
increase in community
Okay, yeah, I
care-related
see it now.
casework requests from veterans and VA
I do-
staff
slightly
in recent
retarded.
weeks.
Th-
for
That's
whistleblowers
why I
and their
use Rumble
conversations to
Studio
me.
now because you can
And
put
I
the
know
chat
that many of
directly
my
on the
colleagues
screen.
have experienced the same thing.
Yeah, I saw that.
A lot of what I know
So,
about what's going on in veterans'
that's why I'm
life
using Rumble
and how
Studio.
the VA
Is
is
perfect?
doing
No.
is in the conversations I have with veterans.
I can
in what we as
I
senators
can get
and members of Congress
if
call
YouTube or
casework.
Rumble forgets to do the
Someone who
live
brings
chat,
us a problem,
you can see what the
with
live
the
chat
hope that
was.
we can make a
so you can
difference
see the whole
and
conversation.
find a solution.
I'm gonna have to
Our
start playing around
casework
with Rumble
in this
Studio.
area has escalated
The
dramatically.
only difference between Rumble Studio and
A number of these
StreamYard
casework
is
requests
the
involve
Rumble Studio has a
one of
maximum
them, for
of
example,
9
involves
participants
a
instead of
veteran
10.
with cancer. And I mentioned this in a hearing in which
That's
VA
normally
officials
not a
were
deal
in front of
breaker,
our
though.
Veterans Affairs
No,
Committee
man. Typically you
just in
get
the last couple of weeks.
more than 5 people.
But
in a
this
stream,
veteran
it gets
with cancer,
chaotic as fuck.
He
Yeah,
and
or
others
if you
who
have
have
Flying
cancer,
Rich and
chronic
Dark
pain, or
in the
mental
same
health
chat.
concerns, they're among the most vulnerable,
No,
high-risk
we ain't
veterans in the VA's patient population.
I
In
gotta
this
give
one
them shit.
case, the VA canceled
Anyways.
community care authorization for a veteran in Manhattan, Kansas, about an hour
By the
away
way,
from
Coop, can you
Topeka,
hear this?
where there's a VA hospital. The issue here is this veteran, one, why
That's
did
a
they
bummer.
cancel the care? But
Oh,
two, this veteran had completed 58
Did you have
of
one or did you
60
print one?
cancer treatments.
I
And the
plead
VA
fifth.
canceled the last 2 in his hometown and told him he needed to find
And if
chemotherapy
somebody says you can't plead the fifth,
at the
it's not,
VA
it's
in
not,
Topeka,
it's not a murder trial. I don't
about
care.
an
I'm
hour
pleading the
away.
fifth anyways.
Hey, you can
The
plead the
VA
fifth
wanted
in
him to
any
drive
trial.
back and forth to Topeka
You don't have to incriminate
for his
yourself on
remaining
anything.
treatments. Now, the VA, when I
Yeah.
told him the facts,
Plead to
saw
1,
this
2,
is
3, 4,
something
5,
that's wrong in
6.
these here,
The funny
something
thing
wrong
is,
here,
I
and
did
adjusted to
3D
allow him
print
to
one
allow
the other
him
day,
to
but
have
it
his
doesn't- it
treatments the
doesn't
last
fit
2 of the
the
60,
rifle quite
where he
right.
had been receiving the first 58.
So me and Rich are
But it's only one example
some
of
files.
which the VA is rolling back the opportunities for veterans who are already
still trying to get my
receiving
damn
care in the community
Recognize a
from
fucking
continuing to receive that care.
SD card right now.
your 3D printer.
These
Yeah.
kind of decisions would
Hmm.
be alarming and
I can't
unacceptable
find the one that
to
I've
me
been
and many
using.
of
I
my
went and bought a
colleagues. I think
brand
at
new
any
one, like
time,
30-something gig.
but it's
and that
particularly
bastard will
concerning
not
right
recognize
now, and it's why I'm on the Senate floor today highlighting this issue. It's particularly
30
concerning
something,
right
60.
now, given that the VA recently implemented a strategic
54
hiring
gigs.
pause in the VA healthcare system and is actively working to reduce the VA workforce by 10,000 employees. It defies my understanding how the VA expects to limit choices for veterans in the community. In other words, forcing them into a VA direct care system, while at the same time working to reduce staff in that direct care system that are actually available to
You know,
care.
they're
for
running
those
around right
veterans.
now, throwing all this other horse shit out here, trying to get everybody
Independently,
on board
these
for
policy
this
goals
unanimous
are
consent
cause
vote.
for concern. Together, they risk the welfare of veterans.
But the good thing
and
about the
VA's
unanimous
workforce
consent vote
nationwide.
is all it's going to take is one person to say
I
no.
would encourage my colleagues
and
to
it's
take a
gonna have
look
to
at
go
the
through the
casework
whole
that their
process.
staffs are working on behalf of veterans in their states and see if they're not experiencing
Yep.
the same thing that I'm seeing, which is more and more veterans saying, Senator Jerry, Senator
Yeah,
Moran, can you
it
help
wasn't
me?
long after the
I've
opinion
been receiving
came out,
care in the
Chuck Schumer
community.
said
I
they were gonna
like
be in
the
here
way
trying to
I'm
get this shit
receiving
voted
that
through.
care. I like my provider. And yet the VA is pulling the rug out from under me.
Yep, and it's gonna bite him in the ass.
These actions could cost some veterans their lives
I hope so.
and drive other veterans away from
Well,
VA healthcare benefits that they've
I was
earned
able to get a
and
hold of
deserve.
Tim Scott's aide.
I've
at
had
his
several
wa-
veterans tell me, I like what I'm getting in the
Obviously-
community so much. I'm going to
Obviously,
pay
he's in
for it out of my
Washington
own
right
pocket.
now, probably dealing with this bullshit. anyways.
Veterans can do better.
Someone
The VA
can send
can do
him
better.
a
The VA
message
must do better.
quickly that hey, you got a
But I don't
constituent
think
that
this is
called that
just
says he wants
a
this.
happenstance. I don't think that the facts or the circumstances I'm describing to my colleagues just something that seems to be happening at the VA. It's a concerted effort by VA leadership to bring community care veterans back into direct care at the VA. And as my colleagues may recall from the Mission Act, what the law says is a veteran, in many instances, most instances, is entitled to care in the community if he or she, the veteran, along with their provider,
What's them
decide
Gabriel
it's in
going
the
about
best
on
interest
about?
of the veteran. That decision is not made by the VA whether a veteran is entitled to care in the community. It is made by the patient, the veteran, and the provider, the doctor,
One,
the nurse
2, 3,
practitioner,
4, 5.
the physician assistant. And yet there is a concerted effort in VA leadership
Yeah,
to deny veterans that care and insist that if they're
yeah.
going to
Scoop is here
receive
now.
care,
So
they receive it direct care within the VA healthcare system.
if I got it too loud, or is it?
I'm a fan
loud
of the
enough?
VA healthcare system. I support it. I work hard to make
Sounds
sure
cool to
that
me.
it has the
All right, good.
capabilities, the assets, the necessary resources.
This is
to
what
do its
people with
job.
a proper internet connection can do.
But I also
Yeah,
know that
yeah,
there are
yeah,
circumstances, particularly
Love
in
my
rural
neighbors.
areas,
Not-
or certain
Not-
kind of
Not the
specialized
tin
treatment
can with
in
strings.
which it's the right
Hey,
thing
look,
to do to allow
you
a
leave
veteran
us-
with
it's
his
at
or
least
her
fishing
desire
Okay.
and his or her provider saying, this
You
is in
ain't
the best
catching any
interest
fish or
of my
crawdad with that. I
patient
can tell you that.
to have care provided in the community.
Nah, probably not.
You might be able to catch some rats.
This is a really important issue. The VA struggled to provide care for veterans in the past.
Maybe a possum or two.
Many improvements have been made,
a
but we
demo
have
rat.
given veterans a choice.
Oh, catching
And the
dim
VA
rats
has
easy. All you
no
gotta do
right,
is
no ability
start talking anti-gun
to
shit.
undermine the
Pop out of
choice that a
woodwork.
veteran makes. I
Guns
call on the
are
VA
bad.
to immediately
All
reverse
weapons,
course.
mass murder.
Think of the
VA has, of
children.
course, explained to me their
Yeah, think of the
rationale.
children. It's
In
always
some
the
ways,
children.
deny that there's any concerted effort or any policy change. But the circumstances are so evident, so
You know, I
prevalent
would think of the children,
that
but Then I
I
remember something
absolutely
very
believe
important.
that the VA's policies, encouragement of their staff,
The fact you
is
don't
to
want
do
to be
something
unarmed and have
contrary
all your
to the
children
law.
loaded on trains and gassed by the
The VA
state.
needs to reverse its course,
I'm single.
reaffirm the right of
well.
veterans,
I have no
those who
children.
served our country. They have the right to seek the care that
Oh, I
they
said
need
that out
and
loud.
desire in the community in which they live,
You know, I come at it
or
as
where they
to the
believe the
point where I
best
know what
absolute
happens
care
when
can be
societies get
provided to
unarmed by
them
their governments
under
and,
their current healthcare
it tends to
circumstances.
end up in a
Mr.
fuckload of
President, I
innocent
yield the
people
floor.
getting murdered by the state. So I'll take my chances with the guns. I mean, look at this damn lazy ass AK I had sitting here all day long by himself. He hadn't gone out and done shit.
Who?
I note the absence of quorum.
This AK.
Clerk.
Huh. That AK needs help.
He's right where I left him.
You know what else is right where I left it?
Hmm.
My foul.
Nice.
The one that Mark Novak fixed up.
There you go. Rub my nose and stuff again.
I love this rifle.
Oh, I bet. And Saint Novak does some amazing work.
And that's what a 30-round magazine sounds like. But I can't show it on YouTube, so that's why it's only in the audio. Once I turn off the YouTube stream, though. So, did you have a productive day, Coop?
Decent. At least today wasn't as hot as yesterday.
Yeah, I think that right. Knives is like, I hate you guys right now. Well, Knives, you know, well, I'm sorry that you're an ATF plant. I'm sorry, dude.
Well, that's why he's Mr. Knives and not Mr. Guns.
Right. He's an ATF plant the whole time. Now he's gonna say, I'm gonna kick you in the nuts, Night Strike. He's been promising me that for at least 10 years.
He better be careful, man. Some people got that fetish.
Yeah, I don't. I can tell you that right now.
Fuck no. I don't even. Well, they're little sneaky grazers where the pain takes a minute or two to kick in and sneak up on you. I think they suck worse than a direct hit sometimes.
Yeah.
Uh-oh. Looks like Newtown Action Alliance is posting about calling the senators too.
Yep.
Today, the Senate will vote on my legislation to restore the federal ban on bump stocks after the radical Supreme Court majority invalidated it. I'm fighting to save lives past the bump stock ban.
You see, when they vote against them, when they vote against what they want, they're radical. But when they vote for what they want, or it goes for what they want, they don't say anything.
No, and their entire premise is, well, it's because their entire premise is never based on a factual premise, and it's never based on the actual Constitution. So they can change when the wind blows.
Yeah.
So, I mean, you'll hear a lot of us, we'll call the Supreme Court out when they make a stupid ass decision, but it's always based on a set of values and it's based on a set of facts. Them, it's just all emotion.
One car fast says Coop likes midget porn.
Hey, I do. Man, look, if you've never got along with Bridget, man, I don't know what you're doing with your life.
Oh, yeah. She's not my cup of tea, I can tell you that. But that's neither here nor there. That's a conversation for another day. Damien says, I heard him say that he does. Yes, he does.
Yes.
You know what I'm going to do? When possible, as soon as I got a decent bump stock design down, I'm going to make the Maka stock.
Gonna make the what?
Make America Great Again stock.
Hey, that'll work.
Even though Donald Trump banned them.
That's kind of what makes it so damn funny.
I know.
That's why people losing their minds about this whole thing, and all it was about was, hey, these federal agencies don't have the right to reinterpret law. There's a
wish
legal definition for machine guns.
I really wish Justice Thomas would have stopped at saying it was government overreach. I really wish he hadn't given them the cheat code to go and try and ban them again.
Well,
Senator
Alito
from
was,
Washington.
Mr.
Alito was the
President, I
big one
come
that gave him
to
the cheat
the
code
floor
for. Hey,
today
just
to talk
do
about
this.
the committee on, I ask that unanimous consent that the quorum call be dispensed with.
Without objection.
Thank you, Mr. President. Today, the Committee on Commerce, Science, and Transportation was slated to consider the National Spectrum Security Act. This bill, a hard-won compromise months in the making, would have provided a balanced approach to spectrum management, protected our national defense by ensuring our military has the telecommunications capacity they need, promote innovation by unleashing spectrum for commercial use, and essential for America's economic and international competitiveness. It also funded key bipartisan priorities that make our nation more secure and also increase opportunities for Americans to be competitive in higher wage jobs. This bill was to be considered in a markup today, and those shared priorities by the Secretary of Defense, the Joint Chiefs of Staff, and the Secretary of Commerce. In fact, they all released a joint statement last week in support of the bill. I asked unanimous consent
Rich printed an
that their
ugly ass
statement
bump
be
stock
put into
for
the
his
record.
Geisley. Yes,
objection.
yes, he did. I printed
Thank you,
the
Mr.
same
President.
One.
Why
Problem
did
is, it
these
doesn't work.
agencies stop sparring and
It's-
finally agree to a
The
path forward?
tolerances are out of spec.
Simply put, it's because Spectrum
Just too
helps
tight.
each of them meet their responsibilities on behalf of this nation.
There was some damn
The
sandpaper
Spectrum
and
deal
stick that
would
in your
have
teeth.
put policies in place that give federal agencies equity at each part of their agencies and a seat at the table in Spectrum
They are too
decision-making. It eliminated the disruptive interagency disputes that we have come to know that literally have impeded Spectrum policy progress in the past years. It also reinstated the FCC's Spectrum Auction Authority without compromising national security. The FCC has been without its auction authority for more than a year because the fighting among these special interests threaten our economic growth.
Oh no, not our
Establishing
economic
a
growth, Oop.
sustainable spectrum
What are we gonna do?
pipeline would not only spur our own economic
I don't know
growth
yet.
and promote innovation, it would also have raised revenues to fund important critical security and economic opportunities across the United States. One of those key priorities funded through this legislation is the
Is your Senate
continuation
Democrat
of
or
the
Republican?
Affordable Connectivity Program.
Katie Brick.
And I will note that the presiding officer, the president, is very vocal in his support for the Affordable
80
Connectivity
Brick.
Program. I thank him for his leadership. This Affordable Connectivity Program provides affordable broadband to more than 23 million American households. Americans need broadband to speak to their doctors, to do their homework, to connect to their jobs, to stay in touch with
Alabama.
loved ones. It's interesting, Mr. President, you will know that there are parts of the United States where people either can't afford broadband, nor are the
Void brick.
fees and services requirements affordable enough for people to purchase them. I'm pretty sure there's places like that in
Yes.
Vermont.
So it's so important to have a program like the Affordable Connectivity Program. The pandemic laid bare how important broadband access was to every American and to businesses, no different from having access to affordable electricity or heating or telephone capacity. Who are these 23 million Americans? About half of the ACP households are military families. About a quarter are African American. Another quarter are Latino. 300,000 ACP households are on tribal lands. Over 10 million Americans who use the program are
Name is
over
Cooper.
50. So a lot of people on fixed income, elderly, but still count
Number?
on affordable broadband for their daily lives.
Is
Not surprising, just as in this article that was in
580-1139.
yesterday's newspaper in
calling
my
to
state,
ask
the
Katie Britt
end
to
of the
please
internet
stand up
subsidy puts
against
healthcare lifeline at
so-called
risk.
bump stock
And it
ban
describes the
that they're
story
trying
of
to
a woman in
pass state and
Idaho
unanimous
who
consent.
literally was trying to fix her home in a rural community and actually fell down and broke her leg and then
Bravo,
needed that
Coop.
connectivity
Let's do this
to
again. Let's see
maintain
if we can get
connection
that
with her
removed.
doctors and her health care.
Let's
These
do
are the Americans who need this program. They're in
I'm proud
every
of you, Coop.
state. One
I'm
school
working
employee
on it.
told me about a student who hadn't done their homework for weeks.
I was
Her
trying to
teacher
get
called to
time
find
cover it.
out. The student didn't want to say. They didn't want to be called out in school. They didn't want any of their friends to know. They just didn't have internet services. She wasn't trying to get out of the work. She was just trying to protect her family and protect herself. We can't be asking parents to choose between a child's food and their education. But despite this demonstrated level of need, the Commerce Committee, my colleagues on the other side of the aisle, offered amendments to actually reduce the ACP program. They wanted to get rid of the program that helps these families who cannot afford connectivity.
Coop, I'm going to show
I'm
you
not
this
surprising
rifle
because
later.
some members on the other side don't even support the ACP program. But blocking the committee progress will have serious consequences. For example, this legislation also funded
My name is
a
Cooper.
program called
I
Rip and
am
Replace to remove
one of the
Chinese
people you represent.
spyware from our
I'm
telecom
calling today to
system.
ask you to stand up
Some
against this bump
providers
stock
in
ban that
rural
they're trying to push
communities
through
and
the Senate
telecom
right
networks
now.
don't have the resources to, as we say,
each
rip
time.
out the Chinese spyware and replace it with American products. This
We'll have to do
legislation
that
would
without
also
being a
help
dick,
them.
so I guess that works.
Releasing more spectrum also would lead to greater adoption of new technologies like the Open RAN system, another alternative to an open system that would help our telecom providers upgrade our infrastructure to new spectrum and get rid of the Chinese technology. Getting more
So,
of the secure technology will
you know what
protect
I
our
did, Coop?
communities from
What?
network adversaries
my
and
rifle
allow
upper
Americans to be
and put
in
it
the
on an
lead again
M4 lower
on
with the bump
telecommunication
stock on it.
network equipment.
Nice.
Additionally,
So-
the all-of-government approach to
You know,
spectrum
I just-
management in this bill allows the United
just
States
wanna-
to maintain our commercial and military
You know,
leadership around the globe,
Exercise my constitutional
including
right.
at important standard-setting bodies where adversaries are going to make inroads. This bill would have funded a historical investment in our technology advances that we voted for in the CHIPS and Science Act, particularly in what are called EPSCoR states, tech hubs, and essential programs to maintaining the U.S. competitiveness. There is no
One
way,
Hard-Fast says
Mr. President,
politicians
that rip and
use
replace should be a
as
partisan
a
issue.
scapegoat.
We don't
Yeah, they
want Chinese spyware in our telecom system. There is no way that ACP,
Politicians
affordable
use the
connectivity for people who
bureaucrats
can't
as the
afford it,
scapegoats.
should be
Yeah.
a partisan issue.
No, they can't use
This is about
scapegoats
tackling
when
the
they're
cost of
called
expensive
directly out
broadband
by
for the
their
working poor,
constituents.
and it should not be a partisan
The
issue.
worst thing about all that
Pushing
is
ahead with grant funding
is
enhances
the bureaucrats
America's
are the ones we don't have any
innovation and
control over whatsoever.
competitiveness. It protects our national security,
So,
and it
these
helps us
politicians
with
using
the
scapegoats,
economic
they know what they're
innovation
doing with a lot of
that
these
we
bills, and they
all
just put the
want to see
bureaucrats,
happen
"Look,
throughout
I'm
the
gonna give
United
you enough room
States.
to run, you take
I
care
hope
of it."
my colleagues will stop with obstructing
actually
and get back to negotiating
solid
on the important
legislation.
legislation that will deliver these national security priorities and help Americans continue to have
Yeah, the
access
defi- the
to
legal
something as
definition of machine
essential
gun
as
fit.
affordable broadband. I thank the
actual
president and I yield the
operation of
floor.
a machine gun.
They're in common use. All the criminals have them.
The absence
The
of.
government has them.
Clerk will call the roll.
The police have them.
Ms. Baldwin.
If that's not common use, I don't know what is.
Yeah, let me pull. Oh God.
I knew Knives was a government plant. See? I knew you were a government plant.
You know we're all feds around here.
Not me.
Let's see. All right, that's the House bill. That's 396. All right, that was introduced on 6/14. So the House has a bill too.
It's probably in the mail.
But where is the damn Senate bill?
Yep, that's a Hornet. Running off. For the record, I have Ring doorbells and cameras all around the house. So if I see somebody, yeah, they won't be there for long.
Hey, don't worry. The ATF will come and cut your power and close your cameras off.
They got batteries as backup. Ha ha!
Now, don't think they haven't figured out a way around that.
Oh no. Well, I got places where they can, they can try and cut them off and they can't. Why? Because of that shit right there.
Why is this fucking bill? Let's...
And for those watching, we're waiting for them to get to the bump stock part.
Yeah, like I said, I think they're dragging feet right now, just trying to get everybody to get a consensus on it.
They're trying to get enough people in so that nobody will, or they're waiting for enough people to leave so that they can just do a unanimous consent without them having to vote.
That is a distinct possibility also. As long as they've got enough people there for a quorum, they can run it through. But again, all it's going to take is one Republican to stand up and say, "Look, nope, we ain't doing this," because it has to be a unanimous consent to pass.
Yep, just one senator. That's all it takes. One senator to tell them to go take a hike. And if I were the Republicans, I would make the committees last twice as long as what the Democrats do with any pro-gun bill. Twice as long.
Oh yeah, at least.
And make every single Democrat hear nothing but pro stances for why they should stay. Not allow any anti stances on it. Or disprove everyone. ADX R920 says, another hold my beer movement. This bullshit has to stop. These people need to be held accountable and removed from government.
Yes,
At least that's what I think he's saying. It's like, hold my beer. Yeah.
Any time a politician is responsible for supporting an unconstitutional bill, they should be removed from office, hands down.
Okay. Anytime a representative, whether they be a senator or a representative, goes and files a bill that is detrimental to the Bill of Rights, no matter what, in any shape or form, doesn't matter how minute it is, should be flogged and then sent to prison.
I'll tell you what, any of them that have passed a bill, been responsible for passing a bill, and then American citizens are jailed or lives destroyed because of that bill, because it became a law and they supported it.
For those that don't know, I was using flogged as an old English term, which means beaten.
Yeah. Senselessly. Or maybe we're trying to beat sense into him at that point.
I don't know. You got a message, Coop.
Yeah, my phone's over here dinging about stupid shit. I'm getting more messages about voting in Georgia, even though I haven't lived in Georgia for years. But apparently, they don't update their shit.
Alito had to open his mouth, or whoever he was.
Yeah, I mean, Alito was...
It wasn't Alito, it was Thomas. Thomas had said if they did it this way, then...
No, Alito came out and basically said that,
And then they started attacking Alito.
Well, I mean, Alito's the one that said this needs to go through legislation, basically. I'd have to pull it back up and read exactly what he said, but it sounded like he was awfully favorable of it going through legislation.
Which is funny because he's in trouble for the anti-pride flag his wife likes to tout off on their house property. Oh, you didn't hear about that, did you?
I didn't hear about the anti-pride. I heard about the appeal to heaven and then flying the American flag upside down.
Apparently, Alito is up in question with the Democrats. Probably because of this whole situation.
So this bill, except as provided in paragraphs 3 and 4, on or after the date 120 days after the enactment of the subsection, shall be unlawful for any person to import, sell, manufacture, transfer, receive, or possess any affecting interstate or foreign commerce. I hate the goddamn commerce clause. Any manual, power-driven, or electronic device primarily designed or redesigned so that when the device is attached to a semi-automatic firearm, the device materially increases the rate of fire of the firearm or approximates the action or rate of fire of machine guns. Machine guns have many different fire rates, you bunch of dumb shits.
No one ever called them smart. If they did, they have to have a bone in the middle of their head.
So the old potato digger, the show shot rifle, had a cyclic rate of 240 rounds. That ain't fast.
You want slow? Go the cyclic rate of the what is it? The grease gun.
Yeah,
that's
the
slow.
wasn't fast. The BAR wasn't that fast.
Mr. President,
Here it is.
Leader.
we in a
Here
quorum?
it is.
Yes.
I ask unanimous consent that the quorum
Should
be
be it.
dispensed with.
Without objection.
Thank you, Mr. President. Now, I am proud to come to the floor today to stand with my good friend and a great leader on this issue, Senator Martin Heinrich, on a matter of life and death.
Oh,
A few
bullshit.
days ago, the MAGA Supreme Court struck once again, reversing
Oh, it's
a
now the
ban
MAGA
on
Supreme
dangerous
Court.
bump
All right, I'll take
stocks
that.
like the
Yeah,
one
they've been
used in the
saying
Las
that for
Vegas
weeks.
shooting, the deadliest mass shooting ever committed by one person. Today, the Senate must step into the breach and pass a federal ban on bump stocks,
Yeah, they're going to have
which
to cut
Senator
Jerry's
Heinrich
hand
has
off.
championed. I urge Republicans not to block this common sense safety measure. Banning bump stocks
Republicans
should be
do
the work
exactly
of 5
that.
minutes.
Please.
It's an idea that even
Damn
some
well better.
conservative senators have claimed to support in the past. Some conservative colleague of mine on the Republican side said a while ago that if a bump stock ban, quote, actually gets on the Senate floor, quote, I'd vote for it. The senior senator from
Bullshit.
South Carolina also said, I think doing away with bump stocks, that's achievable. I'm willing to get rid of that, unquote.
No, he didn't.
Some Republicans even supported Donald Trump when he, hardly a friend of gun safety, backed bump stocks after Las Vegas shooting. If banning bump stocks was good enough for Republicans in the past, it should be good enough for them today. But if Republicans block this bill today after claiming to support bump stock bans in years past, a ban even President Trump supported when he was president,
Because
shame
you were
on
supposed
them.
to help him out. You
They'd
did.
be
You did the
siding
opposite.
with the gun lobby over families exasperated by gun violence.
Oh,
And
go
Mr.
fuck
President,
yourself.
it's amazing to me that the MAGA Supreme Court even went to the right of Donald Trump on this issue.
'Cause
Surprising,
Donald Trump was
appalling,
never to the right.
very, very hard to
He
swallow.
did it to placate the
that they would
Democrats
have
and
this kind of reasoning.
get
If
you guys on
Republicans
board,
can
and you
now-
never
can-
went on
If
board.
Republicans now believe a ban on bump stocks is simply too much, they should explain their change of heart to the families in Nevada who lost loved
They don't
ones.
have to explain
If
shit.
Republicans block this bill today after
It's
claiming
called
to
the
support
Second
bump
Amendment.
stock bans in
The
years
right of
past,
people
shame
to
on
keep and
them.
bear arms should not be
Republicans
infringed.
should explain to parents and teachers and students why they'd rather make it easier for murderers to access dangerous weapons
I'm gonna
instead
shut
of
up.
making it harder. It's not enough for Republicans to roll their eyes and dismiss this bump stock vote as a show vote. Tell that to the families.
Because
who
that's
lost
what it
loved
is.
ones.
Because
No,
out of
shut up.
hundreds of thusins of
I
bump
urge
stocks,
Republicans
one
not
was
to
used in the front.
object. Americans are sick of gun violence. They're especially sick of lawmakers who obey the gun lobby and kill any effort to make our
We're sick of
communities
lawmakers
safer.
that take away
And I
our
wanna
rights
thank
instead of
my
giving them
friend
fucking back.
And a great leader in the Senate, Martin
We're
Hyman,
awfully sick
on
of
this and
government
so
violence.
many other issues, whether it's conservation or environment or protecting the rights of people. We're just helping New Mexico in every way as he's now valiantly helping them with the fires that are ravaging in his state. The senator from New Mexico is one of our great leaders here, and I'm so proud to yield to him to make the unanimous consent request.
Senator from New Mexico.
Mr. President, I want to begin today, before we get to bump stocks, by acknowledging the South Fork and Salt fires that have forced literally thousands from their homes in Lincoln County, New Mexico, and the Mescalero Apache Nation over the last 24 hours. I was actually just at the White House discussing these fires with Homeland Security Advisor Liz Sherwood Randall, and these are no joke fires. They are fast, they are large moving, and they are threatening thousands of people's homes today. I know that many are worried that they may have already lost their homes, their property, their businesses.
Yeah, the fires are
their
more important
animals,
than the bump stocks.
and my thoughts are with every single one of you. I want to extend my extraordinary thanks to the wildland firefighters, the first responders, local and tribal leaders who are working right now to protect New Mexicans. And I'm also grateful to all of the surrounding communities that have already
Okay,
welcomed
this guy's a Democrat.
thousands of their neighbors.
Yeah.
In times of need, New Mexicans look out for each other.
Yeah,
And I know that we
Heinrich.
will do
That's the
everything
senator
possible
from, New
to
Mexico.
help our fellow New Mexicans through this immediate emergency and the recovery in the months and years ahead. And I want to stress the importance of everyone in the impacted area to please heed evacuation orders and follow directions from local authorities. Please do everything you can to stay safe.
Heinrich's live.
Now,
so you
Mr.
need
President,
to comment on it.
I'm also here today to make a UC request for the Senate to consider my legislation, the Banning Unlawful Machine Gun Parts, or BUMP Act. Nearly 7 years ago, on October the 1st of 2017, more than
How many are
20,000
they going
people
to ask
gathered for a
for?
large outdoor music festival. It was the third day in a row
this-
that
are they the
folks
same
from all
one,
around
or
the
are they
country
different
joined their
ones?
friends and family
What
to
do you
hear
mean?
music from some of their
Is-
favorite musicians.
The bump act,
And no one
is that
could have anticipated
the
the
same one
nightmare
Schumer's doing,
that
or
was
is that
about to
different one
unfold
now?
that
No, he's letting
that day.
Heinrich introduce it.
just after 10 o'clock at
All right.
night.
Schumer's
Thousands
just
were
get
listening to
him on
the
the
final
floor.
performance of the night. And then over the music, they started to hear what at first people thought were fireworks. Rapid gunfire rained down on the crowd with shots so close together that they seemed to almost bleed into each other. Complete panic erupted. And for the next terrifying 10 minutes, concert goers ran in every direction, searching for cover where there was none.
actually,
Some falling
You know,
down next
Mac
to bleeding
Military
friends
Arms
and
Channel?
dying loved
Yeah.
ones.
he did a Twitter
Others
post
fleeing,
on
desperately trying to reach safety.
comparing the bump
In
stock
total,
fire
the shooter
to the
fired
Nevada-
more than
Nevada
1,000
shooter
rounds
fire?
of ammunition in
and
just 10
the
minutes.
Nevada shooter fire.
He killed
sounded-
58 people
It
that
was
night,
compared about
injured
against a bump
hundreds
stock
more,
and a machine gun.
including two
And
more
it's-
who
the
had
fire rate
ultimately
sounded more
perished
like a
from their
machine gun.
wounds.
That was the cyclic
It
rate
was and
than a normal bump
is
stock.
the deadliest
Dude, there
mass
are
shooting
a
in
lot of
American
combat
history.
vets that I know.
The
that
Las
have
Vegas
listened to that,
gunman
or
was able to
especially,
murder
you know,
and
right
injure
around the
so
time
many
it
people
happened. And all
so
them said it
quickly
sounded, I think,
because
what
he
is it,
used
like
a deadly
240 or-
device known as a bump stock.
Yeah, and the problem is,
Bump
I-
stocks are an attachment that modifies semi-automatic
Oh, shit, they actually got a
firearms
real
to
bump stock now.
dramatically increase their rate of fire, allowing them to operate as fully automatic weapons.
oh boy,
They make it possible to shoot hundreds of rounds a minute.
Fired
And
hundreds of rounds.
let me be real clear, as a
not
firearms
hundreds of
owner
rounds per
myself,
minute.
there's no legitimate use for a bump stock. Not for self-defense, not in a law enforcement context,
Oh, so we're not allowed
not even in
recreational?
military applications, as they're less accurate than a standard fully automatic military platform. But what they are tailor-made for is a mass shooting. Now, I know there are people
They're not
who will
telling
say
me for mass
guns don't
shootings,
kill
they're fucking
people, people
jam-o-matics.
kill people.
Please,
But the reality
one,
is this,
please, one
bump
Republican
stocks
just
kill
stand up and just do
and
it.
injure
Just say it.
in the hundreds.
I
As
disagree.
someone who has owned and used firearms for most of my life, for
That
hunting,
dude, that
for
dude would have
sport,
done
for
if it was
self-defense,
done.
I
like
know
they
for a
say it
fact
was done.
that
He
bump
would have
stocks
done more
serve
damage
no
with the
legitimate
AR-10 and
purpose.
308
And that's why in the
controlled
days and
fire
weeks
than
that
he did
followed
with
the
the
horrific
bump
mass
stocks.
shooting in Las Vegas, Nevada, I led a bipartisan effort to ban bump stocks. I introduced legislation in the Senate alongside my Republican colleague and friend Jeff Flake of Arizona and Nevada's Senator Catherine Cortez Masto. We also called on then President Trump to use his authority to ban bump stocks in a
And
federal
he did, in hopes
rule.
you would actually work with
Now,
him
President
on other
Trump
things.
actually
which
agreed with us at the
instead you
time
tried to
and
impeach him.
finalized an ATF rule to get that done.
Well, that's where Trump was.
But
an
last
absolute
week,
fucking moron.
our wildly out of touch Supreme
Don't
Court
trust
majority
Democrats. Don't make deals with
invalidated
them.
that rule.
They don't honor their
In an
agreements.
illogical and deadly ruling, they made bump stocks legal once again. Now, as Justice Sotomayor
Here we
said
go
in
with
her
Sotomayor or a duck and
dissent,
duck.
when I see a bird that walks like a duck, swims like a duck, quacks like a duck, I call that bird a duck.
Because it couldn't be a goose
I agree
or a
with Justice
swan or any
Sotomayor.
number of different
A
waiting
bump
birds.
stock equipped semi-automatic rifle is a machine gun. And it should be banned just like machine guns have
It is
been
not a
banned for
machine
nearly
gun.
100 years. Now,
It is an
even still,
accessory.
within the Supreme Court's
And machine guns
majority's
still
ruling,
ain't banned, you
they
dickhead.
gave Congress, they gave us clear direction on the only way for us to
You
protect
have no
Americans
proof the Nevada
from
shooter
these deadly
had
devices.
used the bump stock at
Congress
all. Only
needs
proof
to
that
act.
he may have had one
We
in the
need to
room.
pass my bill
That
to
doesn't
ban
mean
bump
anything.
stocks and do it now. And I am proud to lead the Banning Unlawful Machine Gun Parts or BUMP Act alongside senators like Catherine Cortez Masto,
Because that's
Susan
going to ban
Collins,
just
Angus
about every
King, and the
semi-automatic.
more than 20 new
ADX
co-sponsors who joined our
R920.
legislation
I hope the NRA learned their
after
fucking lesson
the
too.
Supreme Court's recent ruling. This
We'll
is the
see
same
what that
bipartisan
means.
bill that I first introduced in
Wayne certainly
2018 in the aftermath of that shooting. The BUMP Act would prohibit the sale of bump stocks and other devices that allow semi-automatic firearms to increase their rate of fire and operate as fully automatic weapons. This is something that nearly all Americans agree should be done. This should be
I don't
a
give a
common
shit
sense,
what all Americans
bipartisan
agree.
public safety vote that all of us should welcome if we believe that our kids should have the freedom to feel safe in their church or their classroom or their movie theater.
All places
We
where a
should
bump
also be
stock is
clear
never
about
used.
what happens if we don't pass this legislation. We will be giving a free pass to street gangs and cartels and mass shooters to access these deadly devices and turn them against our communities. That's the harm that we're putting our communities in. There's some skepticism out there about whether Congress can get this done, about whether all of us coming
Yeah,
together
yes,
to
you're right
ban
there.
bump stocks is impossible. But 2 years ago, we proved that type of thinking is flat
NRA will
wrong.
never learn their lesson until
Over
most
my
of the
time
upper
here in the
management
Senate,
is
I have
purged.
learned that people
Yeah, no
are
kidding.
always quick to tell you there's no path forward for your legislation. And the reality is that there is never a path forward until we collectively choose to make one. I was proud to be part of the core group of bipartisan negotiators here in the Senate that helped pass the Bipartisan Safer Communities Act. That was the first significant federal gun safety legislation signed into law in nearly 3 decades. And during those negotiations, I worked especially close with my colleague, Senator Collins, on a successful effort to increase criminal penalties for those who would put
Why
guns
does the
into the
staffer
hands of
sit over there
criminals
looking like he
and to
just
make
got
it
touched in the
illegal
dono
to
square and he
traffic
didn't know?
firearms out of our
Why is
country.
the staffer sitting there
And by
anyways,
passing that
period?
law,
He's
we
not a
proved
senator.
that Congress can
Oh, he's over there
take
flipping the board.
concrete action to protect our communities.
Okay, that
from
might
gun
be
violence.
reason why they let him sit there.
Now, Mr. President, now it's time that we take similar bipartisan action to ban these bump stocks. And for my part, I refuse to stand idly by and wait for the next mass shooting. So I would ask all of my colleagues to please support the BUMP Act, to ban these deadly mass killing devices.
Maybe
once and
Chip
for all.
Roy will stand up and say no instead.
Mr. President, I
Chip
ask
Roy's in the
unanous
House.
consent
Oh, he's
that
in
the
the House?
Committee on the
Oh, boy.
Judiciary be discharged
Maybe
from
it'll be
further
Ted Cruz.
consideration of S1909,
Yeah,
the
it's gonna have
Banning
to be someone
Unlawful
like
Machine Gun
Cruz.
Parts Act, and the Senate
I'd
proceed
love
to
to
its
see
immediate
Tommy Tuberville
consideration.
get up and actually show some
Further,
balls.
that the bill be
They
considered
said
read
Lindsey Graham
a
is
third
supporting
time
of it. I don't
and
see it.
passed, and that the
But if he
motion
does
to
support
reconsider
it, fuck
be
him.
considered,
I'm not
made,
voting for him
and
again.
laid upon the table.
Is there objection?
Mr. President, reserving the right to object.
Senator from Nebraska.
Whoa, Nebraska was
Welcome
first.
to another day in the Democrats' summer of show votes.
Whoa.
We need to be very clear why the majority leader is now holding this show vote. The Supreme Court made a decision last week that he didn't like. A 6-3 majority of the Supreme Court.
Okay, I'm
ruled
going to
the
take this
Bureau
as a win.
of
Thank you,
Alcohol,
Nebraska.
Tobacco, Firearms, and Explosives
I heard
overstepped
that. Nebraska
their
needs a beer.
authority when they tried to
Get that man a
reclassify
beer.
bump stocks as machine guns. The Supreme Court made the right decision. In January, I joined Senator Lummis and other colleagues in filing an amicus brief urging the Supreme Court to do what they did. But the majority leader and his Democrat colleagues supported the gun-grabbing overreach. So the majority leader has decided to bring up a bill called the Bump Act. He claims this bill will ban bump stocks. But just like his
Tactical
previously
Muffin Top is out there
misnamed
saying,
bills,
my boy,
if you
Nebraska.
actually read the bill, that's not what it
Yeah,
does at
come
all.
up on top. What's up, bro?
The Bump Act targets common firearm accessories, not just bump stocks. This is from the text of
Nebraska,
the bill.
I think better of
The
you
bill
now.
bans any
Nebraska
manual,
coming in hot, baby.
power-driven, or electronic device, primarily designed or redesigned so that when the device is attached to a semi-automatic firearm, the device materially increases the rate of fire of the firearm.
See, that could
In
be
short, this doesn't ban
restricted.
bump stocks. This bill would ban literally
Simple trigger
any
drop.
item that makes a firearm easier and in some cases safer to shoot. We're talking about competition or adjustable triggers. We're also talking about items that reduce the distance between a shooter's hand and the trigger, like certain
That would
firearm
be one
stocks,
no vote.
grips.
So not
Again, it's not
unanimous.
just about bump
exactly.
stocks.
Yep.
Exactly. All
That's
it
why
takes, all
disabled
we wanted
veterans
was just
hate this
one
bill.
no vote from
For about veterans
any
in Nebraska
Republican
who are,
senator.
are concerned about this bill.
Later,
Sometimes
Knives. Take it easy,
veterans who are
brother.
disabled or elderly
Later,
choose
Knives.
to adjust the stock or grip on a firearm to make it easier and safer to shoot. The Constitution protects their right to do so, that through the Second Amendment. This bill would take that constitutional right away from the same men and women who fought for our Constitution. The other problem with this bill is that it doesn't even define what it's trying to regulate. The bill uses the phrase rate of fire 5 separate times. 3 of those times, the bill said it would ban a device that materially increases the rate of fire of a firearm.
That
Nowhere in
means
the bill does it
FRPs.
define what
That
constitutes
means,
the rate of fire
bump
increase.
fingers. That means, bump
The other 2
shelves.
times it says it
or
would
even,
ban a device that approximates
belt
the
loops.
action or
They'll
rate
outlaw
of fire
belt
of a
loops.
machine gun. But under federal law, it's not the rate of fire that makes something a machine gun. Under 26 USC 5845B, it's a mechanical function. So either this rate of fire section was written by someone who had no idea what they're talking about, or it's a cynical attempt to include more firearm accessories than just bump stocks. I would bet the latter. And let's be honest, does anyone seriously believe this lawless Biden administration would interpret this law in a way that respects law-abiding gun owners?
No.
Not. On this and other issues, the Biden administration has repeatedly expanded previously interpretations of our laws in ways that go far beyond what even the Obama administration was comfortable with. And they were no friends of the Second Amendment. We cannot allow unelected bureaucrats at the ATF to abuse their authority and interpret laws in ways Congress clearly never intended. So this bill may be called the Bump Act, but it's not really about bump stocks. This bill is about banning as many firearm accessories as possible and giving the ATF broad authority to ban most semi-automatic firearms. It's an unconstitutional attack on law-abiding gun owners. Under this bill, owners of any semi-automatic firearm that has been modified to make it easier to fire would be forced to register their firearms alongside actual machine guns in the ATF's National Firearm Registration and Transfer Record database. And if they don't, they'd be in violation of the law. That's really, really scary. If this bill becomes law, it would give the Biden administration the authority to force confiscation of any common semi-automatic firearm that has been modified to make it easier to shoot. The majority leader knows this bill will not pass. It won't pass because enough people in this building still believe in the Constitution. And the Constitution affords Americans the right to own a firearm. This vague, overreaching bill directly infringes upon that right. For safety, we ought to better enforce existing gun laws and address mental health issues. This bill doesn't do that. In fact, it doesn't do anything to address the root causes of gun violence. We're not addressing the mental health or cultural issues driving men and women to commit these horrible crimes, the failed family structures, the depression, the division and glorification of violence on social media. If Democrats really cared about gun violence, they'd be trying to build support for a bill that can actually pass. Instead, we have a show vote on a bill that uses vague language to ban as many firearms accessories as possible and limit the Second Amendment rights of disabled and elderly Americans who may need certain accessories to use a firearm safely. We should be working on things that actually keep Americans safe, like the National Defense Authorization Act. For these reasons, Mr. President, therefore, I object.
Objection is heard.
Mr. President,
Senator from New Mexico.
I just want to remind our colleagues that we actually did pass legislation 2 years ago to invest in mental health. And we passed a meaningful gun safety piece of legislation.
No, they threw
but
a
the
bunch of
assertion
red
that this
flag
would
laws
ban
at
some
safer communities.
enormous number of firearm devices is certainly not rooted in fact. It would, however, ban bump stocks, and it would ban things like Glock switches, which also let semi-automatic firearms act as fully automatic firearms.
Glock switches are already illegal.
Mr. President,
they're already.
I think the
machine guns.
American people understand what common sense gun safety looks like.
Until the Supreme Court
And
says
that's
they
what the
aren't.
Bump Act is all about. I will reserve the rest of my time, but this will not be the last time you hear about these devices on the floor of the Senate.
Yes, it will be. So so they didn't get it through without going through a committee. And I hope
Note the
Republicans
absence of
make sure
quorum.
that committee
Clerk will
goes
call the roll.
3 times as long. Draw that fucker out.
Oh, no doubt.
Good job, Nebraska.
Yeah, Gabriel, 100% single function of the trigger. Doesn't matter whether that trigger is a push button, pull, paddles, you name it. Single function of the trigger has to release more than one round
Right.
without, manual reloading. So if it doesn't do that, then it is not a machine gun.
Nope.
Letting an agency interpret a statute like that and just basically overbroaden it should terrify anybody with any common sense.
It
Because
does.
if they can do that with that, they can do it with anything.
Is Tactical Muffin Top an alias? Shh. No. Tactical Muffin Top is one of the newer YouTube gun guys. He just started doing streams and chats.
Oh, cool deal, man. I have to look him up.
Yeah, he's part of Never Enough Ammo's crew.
All right.
And love him, hate him. I have a special place in my heart for Never Enough Ammo. He's a good friend. He's like a brother to me.
I don't think I've ever followed him. I have to look him up too.
But some of his jokes can go a bit too far.
Oh yeah, I've never been guilty of that.
Yeah, well, yeah. That's why with Matt, I say it's if you hang out with Matt, it's like being in a frat party.
Yeah, I've never been guilty of drinking and smoking and saying stupid shit online.
So, oh no, we've never done that on any live stream, have we?
No. Never. I've never done that.
And at one point there was even a video with me and Never Enough Ammo in the same room, and we saw G-Web's thumb.
Ooh.
G-Webs was there too because his thumb. He gave us a thumbs up. He wouldn't get on camera, but he gave us thumbs up. And I'll
Well,
tell
at
you
least
why.
he gave you a thumbs up.
I'll tell you why off camera. Off stream. Cool.
All right, there. I just sub tactical muffin top.
Yeah. But G's on John Crump Live right now.
Huh?
G is on John Crump Live right now.
Is he?
Well, he should be 5.
Okay, yeah, it ain't 4:38.
I'm gonna. Crump probably already knew about this. Go and tell him anyways.
Yeah, Crump did just a premiere just a little bit ago talking about this.
Yeah, well, I'm gonna mention it.
Boy, I don't care who you are. Alex Zedra is just fucking hot.
Should we keep the stream going, or are we good now?
Let it run a little bit longer because right now they're going through the vote, or should be getting ready to the vote.
And you got a phone call.
Yep. That's the wifey. Hey, babe. No, I'm at the house.
The infamous Wanamaker show. Yes, that was the one, Kim Gabriel. That was the one. You were probably watching that. It's funny. Here they come.
Mr. President,
Senator from Nevada.
are we in a quorum call?
Yes.
Ask that the quorum be vitiated.
Without objection.
Thank you. Mr. President, I rise today to express my deep disappointment in what I just heard, unfortunately, from my Senate colleague from
Yes, because you're a Democrat and
Nebraska,
you don't. If you
Senator
don't hear
Pete
what you'd
Ricketts,
like, you
who,
complain about. It.
blocked Senator Heinrichs and mine and Senator Collins legislation, common sense, that would save lives. And I'm talking about Senate Bill 1909, which is the banning of unlawful machine gun parts, or what we are calling as the Bump Act. Now, it is shocking to me that my colleagues aren't willing to move forward on such an important issue. Bump stocks are deadly firearm accessories that turn
It's a piece of
semi-automatic guns
plastic.
into machine guns, which are illegal, allowing a shooter to fire multiple bullets per second. Now, my husband and I are gun owners.
No, you're not.
We don't need a bump stock. And I know any
Bullshit.
common sense gun owner doesn't have a bump stock. What do you need it for?
There's
They're
there's no
dangerous.
such thing as a
They're
common sense
incredibly
gun
deadly
owner.
devices that have no place
There are gun
on our
owners and then there are
streets.
Democrats.
And I'll tell you what, I know firsthand the damage that bump stocks can do, because nearly 7 years ago, Mr. President, when I was a brand new senator, had just been elected in 2017, Las Vegas, my hometown experienced the deadliest mass shooting in American history because of bump stocks. On October 1, 2017, a gunman opened fire at the Route 91 Harvest Festival in my hometown of Las Vegas. He had outfitted his weapons with bump stocks, allowing him to spray over 1,000 bullets into the crowd of concert goers. And when I say spray, he was
Allegedly.
in a hotel room, knocked out the window, and it wasn't just a spray of bullets, it was raining down bullets on concert goers below. And it was intentional. In 10 minutes with that bump stock,
It
he
wasn't
murdered
a bump stock.
58 people.
It was a machine gun.
867
Not a bump
total
stock.
people were wounded.
Even
Half
if
of
you
those
think it was
people,
a bump stock,
411,
he could have
were
done
wounded by
more
gunshots,
damage
including
with the
2 who later
average
died as a
semi-automatic
result of their
.308
injuries.
with
Think
aimed
about that.
fire
Almost
versus
470
just
people hit
area
by
fire.
bullets in under, in
know,
under 10 minutes. Now,
I hate to do
I want you to
this,
imagine the terror all those families must have felt.
but I'm going to pull up.
Unfortunately,
Matt's
I don't
video.
have to imagine it because I experienced it. My niece was at that concert that night. And I know exactly where I was when I found out she was there. I know exactly where I was when I found out she was safe. And later on that evening, I went to the Family Reunification Center and sat with those families who were waiting to hear from the coroner who was in the back room whether their loved one was in that back room. Now, I am thankful that my niece was not hit by one of those bullets. But too many were either killed or hit by bullets or suffered emotional distress because of it. I will never forget that night. I will never forget those families. It's heartbreaking. You could see their hopelessness in the room at the number of deaths and injuries being reported on TV as it continued to grow, waiting to hear. And I have to explain this because too much happens here in Washington, D.C. that we just think, oh, this is a number or this happened in some other community. When I'm talking raining down bullets on concert goers, think about this. As I talked to the doctors afterwards in the emergency rooms, the people that were injured, because it rained down, it came down on their heads, it came down on their body parts, it came down in devastating locations for people who actually survived that event but were wounded. Our hospitals were overrun. Nevadans, including me, we stood in line at blood banks for hours because there was such a need for blood in the hospitals for so many who had been injured. And as I've said, I talked to the doctors treating these injuries, And they described to me the scene that night was like a battlefield, a battlefield. The blood everywhere, the blood on the floor, the people that picked up bodies and took them to emergency rooms. They weren't literally ambulances that were picking these people up. These were concert goers. These were people that grabbed people to save them, put them in their own vehicles, and took them to the closest hospital. That was what was happening that night because somebody had a bump stock. Because somebody thought it was okay to outfit their guns with bump stock so they can kill more people in rapid succession. Now, understanding this, because this happened October 2017, we had a new president at the time. President Trump was the president at the time. Former President Trump directed his administration to ban these bump stocks. And I tell you, President Trump came out to Las Vegas at that time. He saw, he heard. He banned the devices because he said, and I quote, legal weapons into illegal machine guns. That's what these bump stocks do. They turn legal weapons into illegal machine guns. Now, I believe the Supreme Court was wrong to overturn the Trump administration bump stock ban. But now that it's been struck down, it's on Congress to pass legislation to keep our community safe from these deadly devices. Now, the reason why we went through ATF,
who originally posted it,
and the Trump administration asked for ATF, because that was the quickest way that we could do it administratively. The quickest way that we could take action and keep people safe.
I don't know if I should show it, though.
Now, in the most recent decision, Justice Samuel Alito said it himself in his concurring opinion in this case. He said it's within Congress's power to make this right. And I quote, this is from his concurring opinion. The horrible shooting spree in Las Vegas in 2017 did not change the statutory text or its meaning. That event demonstrated that a semiotic rifle with a bump stock can have the same lethal effect as a machine gun. But an event that highlights the need to amend a law does not itself change the
You
law's
could have put
meaning.
someone up in a hotel room in an elevated
And
position
Justice
like
Alito
that,
went on
with
to say there is a
bolt-action
simple
rifle.
remedy for the
If
disparate
they
treatment
were
of bump stocks and
half-assed
machine
doing
guns.
shooting, they would
Congress
kill more
can
people.
amend the law.
They're not. Lee
And
Harvey
perhaps
Oswald,
would
I'm
have
telling you.
done so if ATF had stuck with its earlier
You could have given them a
interpretation.
Carcano rifle.
Now
and they
that the
could have done the
situation
same
is
job.
clear, Congress can act. So to my colleague from Nebraska, this is not a show vote.
They had all the time in
If
the
you were
world
here
to do
when
the
I was
shooting.
here back then,
The
we were trying
Carcano
to
is
move
not
as
an
quickly as
accurate
possible to
rifle.
get something done to save lives.
No.
First administratively.
How do I know? I've
couldn't
got
do it.
one.
According to the court now, I disagree with the court. This is a
Is it like
machine
a
gun,
4
but the court now has put it
gun?
back really in our realm to do something about it. And I cannot imagine any one of my
Let me go through
colleagues
some of the other
standing
comments,
there
right?
saying they wouldn't want to
All
do the
right, so,
right thing here to
Boomsweat
continue to
says,
save
thank you
lives.
for streaming this. All I have to say to
I
these
don't think they want
motherfuckers
to
is
turn a
last
blind
time
eye
I
to what
checked,
happened in Las
speed
Vegas.
limits top out at 70 miles
I don't
per
think
hour
they want
across
to
the
turn a
country.
blind eye to
Are
the
they gonna start
411
banning
people who were
Ferraris
shot
and
at the Route
Lamborghinis?
91 Harvest Festival, the
Brontuay
60
Natter
who were
says-
murdered by gunfire, and the
I'm gonna
thousands of
put this
families
up on
throughout
the-
our country whose lives
Spin it
have been
real quick.
tragically upended because of bump
Okay.
stocks.
I just read that one.
If we can't do something as Congress and come together in a bipartisan issue that not just Nevadans, but people in this country
Brontuay Natter says the gun
understand,
didn't shoot them
then
by
that is disappointing
itself.
and
The man behind the gun
irresponsible.
shot
and it's
shot
negligent.
at everybody.
It's
It
negligent.
wasn't a damn bump stock.
So to my
No, it
Republican
wasn't.
colleagues,
And if
you want to do something about this,
we get another,
and you're not happy with the bump stock
pause
act
in
that
between,
Martin
I'll
Heinrich
show
just
you
put forward,
proof
which
that
I
it
think
wasn't a bump
addresses
stock.
all of the issues,
that
then
Iraq
let's
veteran
figure out how we
88
get this
posted,
done.
and so
Because
did,
it is our role now
Military
to do
Arms
it.
Channel. I got
And we
proof.
shouldn't stop working to right this wrong. I will tell you, I'm going to keep pushing this bill to keep our community safe. I am going to continue to work
Push
with
it as much
anyone
as
who
you
wants
want,
to
but we're gonna
eradicate
still
bump stocks
downvote
in
it.
this country once
I'm going
and
to
for
tell
all.
every Republican to
And
say
that,
no
with
to
that,
you.
Mr. President,
I
I yield
will
the floor.
dog Lindsey Graham's phone every freaking hour if I have to.
Mr. President,
Minority Whip.
Mr. President, just a few minutes, I'll ask for unanimous consent to pass my Born Alive Abortion Survivors Protection Act. This is a very simple bill, Mr. President, and it should be a non-controversial one. It simply says that a baby born alive after an attempted abortion is entitled to the same protection and medical care that any other newborn
Maybe
baby
with
is
that one
entitled to.
objection, it didn't even have to go to a vote.
That's all.
Or didn't have to go to a
It doesn't
recorded
limit
video.
abortion. It doesn't make abortion illegal. It simply states that a baby born alive after an attempted abortion is entitled to medical care. And yet somehow this bill is too much for my Democrat colleagues, Mr. President. Somehow saying that a living, breathing baby born alive after an attempted abortion is entitled to medical care is a step too far. I'd be interested to know exactly what it is that they're afraid of. And I suspect they're afraid that by pointing to the humanity of the born child, they might end up pointing to the humanity of the unborn child. After all, it makes no sense to say that a baby is not a human being a second before birth and is a human being a second after. And so I suspect that Democrats are afraid that recognizing the humanity of a living, breathing, born child in an abortion clinic might end up leading to protection for unborn children. And Democrats are apparently so determined to ensure that the supposed right to kill unborn children is protected that they're willing to oppose a law to protect born children. It is a tragic measure of their extremism on this issue. And if anyone thinks that abortion isn't a slippery slope, that we can somehow devalue unborn babies' lives while maintaining respect for everyone else's, well, I'm here to tell them differently. Because we're at a point where roughly 50% of the United States Congress opposes protecting the lives of born human beings if they happen to be born alive after an attempted abortion. Mr. President, in a matter of seconds now, one of my Democrat colleagues will object to this legislation. But I hope and pray that this will not be the last word, and that one day soon we will get to a point where legislation like this will not be controversial and where human rights of every human being, born and unborn, will be respected. So, Mr. President, I ask unanimous consent that the Committee on the Judiciary be discharged from further consideration of S-204 and that the Senate proceed to its immediate consideration. I further ask consent that the bill be considered read a third time and passed, and that the motion to reconsider be considered made and laid upon the table.
Is there objection?
Mr. President.
Senator from California.
Reserving the right to object, Mr. President, I rise in
They're objecting because we objected to their bump stock.
opposition to the Born Alive Abortion Survivors Protection Act, despite what our Republican colleagues
they've always
propose,
objected to the
contents
Born
of
Alive
this
Act. It's been
legislation
introduced
would
a
yield
bunch of times.
harmful impacts on patients and providers. This bill creates new and vague standards of care for physicians providing reproductive health care that are not based in medicine, not based in science, and not based in fact. It goes to unnecessary lengths to penalize doctors and patients for so-called substandard care when current federal law already ensures doctors the obligation to provide appropriate medical care to all their patients. This bill fails to consider a serious reality for expectant parents. Too often, some parents learn late in their pregnancy that their baby wouldn't survive due to factors beyond their control. At that point, parents are often placed in a position to make one of the most difficult decisions of their lives, which is to end the pregnancy
Retaliatory
and at the
show vote.
delivery
Yep.
of their baby. That is why my
Exactly.
Democratic colleagues and I have taken to the Senate floor over
That's
the last
exactly what
few
they are.
weeks to plead with
Good,
our
Gabriel.
Republican
Thank
colleagues
you.
about protecting a
Anytime
patient's
the
right
Born Alive
to
Act has been
choose what
introduced,
to do with their own
Democrats
bodies.
have shot it
But
down
this
every
bill
single
is an attempt to once again drag our nation backwards, and I refuse, Mr.
They will
President,
do
to sit
anything to
idly
protect
by
abortion.
and watch it happen. For
Past
those
the time that the child is
reasons,
actually
I
born.
object.
Objection is heard.
Mr. President,
Senator from Alabama, Mississippi, pardon me.
close. Mr. President, in a few moments, I would like to ask unanimous consent for the Senate to take up and pass legislation I've introduced to support genuine solutions to infertility and empower couples with autonomy over how they build their families.
Hey, Coop, isn't this your
First, I want
senator?
to take a moment to recognize
No,
the
no, no,
second
no. In
anniversary
Alabama, not
of the
Mississippi.
Dodd's decision, a ruling that underscores
I guess
the great
different strokes for different
significance of
folks.
bringing life into
Yeah, you
this
know.
world. It still doesn't feel
Kinda
real
kiss
that
my
we were
cousin in a
able
way.
to overturn Roe. What a blessing
Yeah,
for
I
this
mean, you
country
know,
that that was.
I don't hear that Cajun
However,
twang from her.
we are still fighting daily to protect Americans from the harmful
No, no, not
pro-abortion
so much.
agenda being pushed by the Democrats.
Between Alabama and
Pro-abortion
Mississippi,
advocates
Alabamians just tend to
have
have
been
more.
creative in spreading fear by
More
using
feet?
issues that Republicans support, such as access to IVF. I have been clear about my strong support for access to IVF and am grateful for its ability to bring God's beautiful creations
How
into
much
this
longer do you think
world.
we should stream this?
And while the
I think
left
we're
wants
pretty
to
much
stoke
done, brother, to
fear
be
in
honest
this
with you.
arena, it's time that we hone in on the real problem
I
and
was just
find
looking to see what some other
long-lasting,
guys were doing, even
affordable
Braden stopped
solutions.
streaming, so I think it's pretty much.
Infertility affects 15 to 16% of couples in the U.S. and is a
So-
profoundly emotional
All right,
experience.
well, I'll go a
While
little longer, and
IVF is
I'll
a
cut it off
procedure
in a
used
few
to
minutes.
create life, it does not treat the underlying conditions that cause infertility and make it difficult for a woman to sustain that life in the womb. If we are going to address the issue of infertility, then we need to start with solutions that promote genuine healing. This is the mission behind the Restore Act, which I introduced with Senator Langford last week. Restore stands for Reproductive Empowerment and Support Through Optimal Restoration. Provisions of this budget-neutral bill include
All right.
educational tools for women seeking information about reproductive health conditions and
All right, I'm gonna show
restorative
something right now,
reproductive
'cause-
medicine, training opportunities for medical
All right. This is what Iraq veteran 8888 posted on what you call it? Here. He posted this the other day, and Mac reposted it, and I commented on it because it really this confers. Listen to this.
Oh, shit. Seriously, I don't know what's going on.
Do you hear it?
There was a story going around when all that shit happened that this dude was involved in some arms deals, whether it was the CIA wrapped up in stuff, and there was a bunch of things flying around. But basically, there was a big arms deal going down, and shit went sideways. And basically, it was a belt fed, and someone broke loose with it and just started hosing the crowd. Which I lean towards that theory.
Yeah, me too.
And then there were a bunch of people saying, "Oh, he had sniper charts with ballistics written on them," and I can pull those up on my goddamn phone. It's not
Well,
a sniper's chart. It's just
You heard what Mac and Iraq veteran 8888 posted just there. You know,
Yeah.
the rate of fire was more similar to a full auto machine gun
Yes.
than a bump stock.
and that's what every
and the other problem is the way he was able to carry on with that rate of fire for that long amount of time. It's very hard to do that with the bump stock. Even
Yes.
if you are a pro bump stock shooter like myself, it is still hard to get a consistent full stream
Okay.
rate.
Here's a question I've asked before, and I've heard a couple of people say you can, and I've heard people say you can't. All right, when you looked at his rifles were set up with bipods. Could you realistically fire that smooth with a bump stock off of a bipod?
With a lot of practice, yes, but not without some hiccups. Even if you well practice, you're still going to have a couple hiccups. And the fact that that guy didn't have any hiccups whatsoever consistently, I doubt that was a bump stock. I really
Yeah.
do.
I seriously doubt it was bump stocks.
For those who like to keep watching this after your stream, go to the U.S. Senate's website. Where do you think I'm streaming this from? The Senate.
Just go to cspan.org.
There it is. The
Yeah.
United States Senate.
Yeah, you go to the United
Senate.gov.
States Senate.
You go to Senate.gov, you click legislation and records and floor proceedings, and it shows the video live every day.
Yeah. You can go there. You can go to C-SPAN. Now, depending on
No,
which committee,
I wouldn't go to C-SPAN. I wouldn't go anywhere than the government website if you want to live stream this. Okay.
I don't know. I use C-SPAN all the time.
Well, I've gotten copyright stuff from C-SPAN, and I'm like,
Dude, they've never bothered me.
well, it bothered me, so that's why I only use anything from the actual source.
Yeah.
That way, you cannot get in trouble for reporting or even commenting on your own government.
Yeah, see, I didn't think C-SPAN would go after you. They went after you, then you're right. You know, go right to the Senate page or House page, or because I've used C-SPAN a bunch. But when there's and it's kind of dependent, because there are some votes, committee votes, or the House or the Senate, that won't show up on C-SPAN. Like some of the stuff on the House Judiciary Committee won't show up on C-SPAN. There was a hearing today on the origins of COVID. I don't think showed up on C-SPAN.
For life. 2 years have passed since the Supreme.
Okay, they're going on for that life stuff. All right.
Yeah.
I think
it's pretty much done for
I
bumps.
think we're done for now. But if anyone wants to continue watching this, go to the Senate.gov website and go to floor proceedings, and you can watch it live, uncut from there. But granted, I was doing this so I could comment on it, and so we could show proof that the Democrats were lying.
Oh yeah.
So
That's pretty much the whole theme of my goddamn channel most of the time.
I know. I know. All right, I'm going to cut this on the YouTube side. So those of you out there on the YouTube side, thank you.
Bye-bye.
Yep. We love you. We'll see you later. If you want to see the rest of the show, come over to Rumble.
Yeah, because we'll show guns.
We'll show guns.
We can do that on Rumble.
Yeah. All right. We'll see you later.
Later, perps.
Make sure.
Da, da, da.
All right.